indicate, like the slide says, kind of the practical significance. Well, should we be as concerned about this as we are about that? And allows us to kind of focus our resources and decision making accordingly. So if you could just go back to what is slide 10. Thank you. I'm going to spend my time kind of orienting you to the types of graphs and visualizations that you'll see in the full report, which again is hosted on the OLR blog. There's a lot going on in these graphs, so I'm going to kind of hit it piecemeal. Please take note of any questions or comments that we can address afterwards. So each kind of main opening graph is going to have the 2021 results on the left juxtaposed with the 2021-2022 on the right. The kind of focal point here, the one that tells the overall average story, if you will, is, or are, the two kind of center panels on either side of that dotted line. So the one on the left tells us the averages from 2020, 2021, and the one on the right tells us the averages again from 21, 22 for the groups of tests that are listed down the y-axis. And it's kind of small here, but if you can see on your devices, I can. What we're technically looking at here are 4 groups of tests. That top row, if you will, that's all tests. So if we are only concerned about, well, what's the average score across all tests, we don't want to disaggregate by, for example, ELA. That gives us that. The next one down, that's ELA in common. So all ELA tests that we have data for, whether it be ELA grade 6 on up to English 2. The next one is science in common. Science grade 5, grade 8, biology, the pre-existing subjects we have there. And then last but not least, math in common at the very bottom. Again, all state math tests for which we have data. The overall story that those bars tell, if you compare left to right, is one of recovery. And how do we know that? Well, if we define recovery as just simply the difference between 21 and 22, in other words, what direction have scores trended over the past 2 years, you can see that on the right, if you look closely, those bars are much closer to the line of zero, which, as Dr. Marr said, that tells us that students are becoming closer to their projected scores, which we are defining as recovery in that sense. If you wanted to kind of break it down a little bit, we'll do that in some of the following slides. You can see that recovery in math is greater than recovery in ELA, again at this overall broad level, with recovery in science kind of falling right there in between. A little bit larger in terms of magnitude than ELA, but not quite as large as math. Now on the outside of the graphs, if you will, the more colorful parts with the shades of blues and purples, that is our attempt to kind of help you think about the full distribution of scores. So it is not the case, for example, that all students fell short of their projected scores. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, that is the legend, the thing that tells us how to interpret those graphs for, again, the ones on the sides. So shades of blue are degrees of negativity, if you will. So if it is a shade of blue, it means that that proportion of students fell short of their score according to these categorizations that were on one of the previous slides, whether small, medium, or large. The shades of purple are the positive scores, the ones where students actually exceeded their projected score as based on their prior testing history. So what you can see is not only just in 2022, but also in 2021 in kind of the heat of the pandemic, I'd like to say, there were a lot of students out there. I think it was something about 40% of students in some cases were exceeding their projected score. So it's not the case at all that all students were negatively impacted, but the average student was. And then comparing again 22 to 21, you can see if you look very closely that there is more purple on the right-hand side, telling us that more students now are exceeding their scores than they were kind of in the heat of the pandemic.
When you say scores, are you talking proficiency, growth, or both?
So again, here we're talking about the difference between their projected score and their actual score.
Growth score?
Essentially a form of growth.
Okay.
Proficiency is just determined by are you above or below a certain threshold. This is for every student on every test. We use an equation to give us our best estimate of what we expect you to score based on your prior testing history. So it's strictly very certain.
can I just confirm that you said this is for 1.4 million students?
There are, I don't know the exact number right off the top of my head, because a lot of this is very fresh data, but essentially, well, what you are looking at is all the test scores come in. SAS, our partner analytics firm in Cary, then converts those scores to these measures of growth. They can't do it for every student that has a test, because one of the big things being they don't have enough testing history. So it is pretty representative of what the entire testing population is.
No students are excluded, right? Unless they have some kind of a category where they have a missing test or they don't, we're not able to do an analysis, so there's no kind of systematic exclusion of any student.
That's right.
The reason why I asked that question, and I could be wrong in my generalization, is that if you look at test scores, proficiency, I don't know that the public sees that there's been a lot of growth because scores seem to be down. Right, so I think the story, and again, that also goes into a lot of the schools that are being judged with their letter grade. This growth that you see only counts for 20% of what goes into the equation is whether they get an A, B, C, D, or F.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons we're working on this analysis using growth as opposed to proficiency is this data is far more actionable for a district or for a charter school, right? You actually can now dig in and identify individual students who are not making growth and then help target resources to those students. If we really just focused on proficiency, what would happen is you would lose track of students who essentially are not, right, or just aren't making growth.
Well, this is a good story to tell because the story that's being told by letter grades tells a different story than this one.
Yeah,
Is what I was.
Which is also why we're working on school performance grade reform at the same
Yes.
time. So,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, let's see. Let's go down a few more slides because I kind of just covered all this. This slide that says 2021-22 recovery analysis for charters, ELA. I think it's after this. Next. Right here. Okay, so like we've mentioned several times, we break this data and we have the ability to break this data down in many ways. The simplest way that we always like to present, and you can see much more than this in the report that's again posted on the OLR blog, is by looking at specific subjects which are not quite the same as specific grades, because for example, a student may be in grade 6 but take math 1, for example. So we're looking at specific subjects which are usually but not always the same as grades. So here on this slide, what you can see now is that instead of these bars being kind of the all in common, it breaks it out by specific subject, ranging all the way from ELA or reading grade 3 at the top down to English 2 at the bottom. And again, if you make that comparison from left to right, this is where you can start to see recovery kind of at the subject level. That is to say, we're asking the question, how are students in 3rd grade reading doing this year compared to students that were in 3rd grade reading last year? So we're not comparing the same students here, we are comparing the same subject. One thing I want to point out that I should have pointed out on the previous one is that in the event the bars, the bar graphs, if you will, the gray bars from left to right, are maybe a little too small for you to read, the actual number that gives you the value of the bar is kind of straddled in between. So, for example, in 2021, the average measure for ELA grade 3 was negative 0.14. In 2022, we see it as negative 0.06. So still not quite where we think we would have been in the absence of the pandemic, but the difference between those two is 0.08. So in other words, students moved forward towards where we expect them to be by over half of how far they were behind in the first place.
Is it safe to say that the ones that are in third grade 2021, we should be looking at the 4th graders in 2024 for a comparison on those students?
So that is a great question. A lot of people have been asking me that. I would say that is a rough comparison that is going to give you a ballpark number of how students are progressing or not as they move from grade to grade. I feel that the better way to do that, and I've got a slide on this near the end, is to actually track the same exact students as they move from transition to transition from grade 3 to grade 4. I'll be explaining that here in a minute, but I appreciate that question. Overall, again, recovery here in ELA, there is positive movement, but it is smaller than what we're going to see in science and math. On the next slide, this is the same thing, but for math, one of the things that I just mentioned that kind of clearly pops out here is that the bars on the right are much closer to zero, and in one case at the very bottom it is now to the right of zero, indicating that those students are beyond where we would have expected them to score in the absence of the pandemic. But you can see here the overall trend is one of recovery, much larger than in ELA over the past 2 years. For example, if we were to look at NC Math 1, which is one up from the bottom, 2021, we have a large average loss, a quite large average loss of negative 0.35, where this year we moved more into just being moderately behind from what we might expect at negative 0.15 or recovery of 0.20. Another thing to point out here, I've mentioned this thing about all scores and subjects for which we have data. There's a good note here on this slide, kind of circling that upper right-hand region. For certain grades in certain years, it was determined by the analytics team that those students, because they had not been in the system so long, also recalling that there were no tests in 2020, that there was just not enough data to project scores for that grade. So that's what we see in math grade 5. Some people may ask, well, can we have any idea of whether students in math grade 5 did better than students in math grade 5 last year? I would say that the overall trend, even though we have no data there, suggests that yes, in fact, they did. And on the next slide, same thing, but for science, again, you'll notice that we lost the subject here because of that kind of missing data problem that I just mentioned. But again, you can see the bars on the right are closer to zero than the bars on the left, meaning that students, compared to students taking the same test last year, we're making positive progress. The next 2 slides, like Michael mentioned, we're always trying to layer in new ways to understand this, make it more accessible to an audience, to push the work forward. I spend a lot of my time working on these things to try to really help the field make this data actionable and drive decision making. What you see in front of you, this is what we have coined the magnitude of recovery. So throughout my time today, I've been speaking about essentially taking the difference between the right-hand side and the left-hand side and using that to answer the question, how are students this year in this subject doing compared to students in this subject but last year? So this is just the differences between 22 and 21 for every subject, and they are color-coded according to our kind of guidelines for whether a loss or a gain is large, medium, or small, with large being blue, purple being medium, and that teal color being small. The overall story here that you can see is, as compared to students taking the same subject in the previous year, we're looking at a lot of recovery. There are 2 subjects for which students actually, compared to students who took the same test last year, slid backwards a little bit. One thing to note, though, however, is that in English 2, those measures have always been positive. So in both measures, or excuse me, in both years, students who tested in English 2 did better than we expected them to. So they're still exceeding scores. It's just that in 22, they didn't do quite as well in that notion. But one that is negative here is ELA grade 5. It's a small negative. But other than that, you can see kind of moderate or large amounts of recovery. Math grade 6, math grade 8, kind of standing out as the 2 large ones, which let us know that teachers in their classrooms, their students this year were doing better as according to their projected scores than students last year. And again, this is just the difference between the right and the left-hand side. And finally, we come to this. This is something I've been putting a lot of work into recently to kind of answer the question that was just hinted at earlier. You know, can we take this bar up here and compare it to the one down here to kind of track students over time? I mentioned that that was a ballpark. This is literally tracking students over time as they progress and transition from grade to grade. So now that we have this data for 22 and also for 21, and there are kids that participated in testing in both years, we can now take the difference for each individual student and average it according to the transition that that student made. So on the left-hand y-axis there, Those are just simple transitions, normal, if you will, transitions that students make as they progress through grades. For example, at the top, ELA grade 3, ELA grade 4. That bar represents the difference in test scores for students who tested in ELA grade 3 in 21, and then went on to test in ELA grade 4 in 22. The fact that that bar is slightly to the left of 0 tells us that those students are still about as far behind in 22 as they were in 21. In fact, they are slightly further behind, a very small amount, but they are actually slightly further behind. Then if you go just down, basically what that tells us is that yes, with one exception again at the bottom, the story kind of being the same story that I just said, basically what that tells us is that yes, students themselves are getting closer to their projected scores in their subjects as they move along. So all of the previous slide, what that suggests to us is that students in this grade are doing better than students in this grade were last year. This tells us that for the most part, a few exceptions there, small negative differences, individual students are coming closer to their projected scores. In other words, they are getting back on track across grades and subjects, at least for the transitions we're looking at right now.
I just want to draw back to Dr. Eldridge's earlier comment. So making this comparison between kind of the growth status and what we expect in terms of student performance as compared to proficiency rates, I think that's where this important distinction is. We have a lot of work to do as a state, right? We are not where we expect students to be. Pandemic or no, we need more students working towards a higher level of proficiency, and what we see here is this idea that a student could be making growth but still not hitting that proficiency mark. But we do think it's important to provide this kind of data, right, to show that, in fact, students are moving. Like we are, teachers are doing a great job of moving kids forward, and we kind of see that starting to bear out. And then we, of course, know where we have a lot of work still to do. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that the data would be actionable. What data will we get at the school level that will allow us to be able to make decisions?
Yep, and so Kaylin will correct me if I get this wrong, but all of the data that you see here is actually pushed out at the school level through the secure EVOS portal.
Okay.
So each individual school has access to their student data in this way. We don't have this data at the state level for individual schools because we keep it secure, because we are also trying to be very careful about not setting up these comparisons between individual schools. Because at this point in the pandemic, we need folks focused on recovery, not comparing themselves to each other.
The data that we looked at is charter schools. It was the trend overall whole state pretty much the same as it was in charters?
Yeah, for the most part, we see kind of very similar recovery regardless of kind of school type.
And one thing I would like to add, and just to make this very explicit, what we're looking at here is just the average. There are many subgroups of students that exist within schools. There are many subgroups of schools that exist across the state. And that's kind of the whole point of the full report, which again is posted on the board level.
So at the school level, will we also get that subgroup data for our school?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
That makes
yes.
sense.
And part of that is, and you may remember this, but every time we put out any type of recovery funding from the state, right, so we have these different PRCs that we put out that charter schools have participated in. Within the guidance for those PRCs, if you are gonna accept those dollars, what we've done is we've asked districts to prioritize students who have been most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And this is what we expect folks to be doing, is taking this data, drilling down, identifying specific subgroups of students who are most in need of support, and then trying to target those interventions to those children in particular. Because that's really how we're gonna move the needle here. It's not this kind of broad brush, right, throw it out at everybody. We need to be really strategic in how we deploy our funds.
This is greatly appreciated. When you're trying to decide on interventions in your school, we're pulling data from all over the place internally, but it really, really helps to have decent data because that's how you can make some decent decisions. Otherwise, you end up intervening in places where you're using your resources poorly.
Yeah.
Well, this really helps you I mean, if you really drill down into it and you spend time in your data, this is where the differentiation happens. I mean, it's easy to then start pulling these kids and saying, these are the folks that we need to target for enrichment, these are the ones we need to target for, you know, getting the support they need. But I'll tell you just as a general statement, that's why I feel like if we focused on a lot more on growth, and I understand we all want our kids to be proficient, but knowing that this picture tells us that there's a lot more going on than we would have thought if you just looked at letter grades and the proficiency scores kids are getting, then it also says how much teachers matter. Because when we were trying to do this from home through a computer screen, compared to they're in our classroom, we're developing relationships and getting down it. That's where the growth happens. So this is a good story about what teachers can do to improve lives for students.
And it looks like we do have funding in the next budget to actually continue this work.
That's great.
Our plan is to actually continue to produce this data for as long
Awesome.
as the data will allow. But as Caitlin kind of pointed out, we start to lose some tests, right, as the cohort moves on. However, we are working with SAS on a kind of another way to actually work on this data, following some of this cohort and looking at student performance over time. And to your point, Dr. Eldridge, we're actually very interested in this idea of how can we measure student subgroup performance over time as they move toward becoming proficient, right? Not comparing them to any specific reference group, but rather those individual students, how are they moving?
That's right.
So that we can continue in this idea of, look, let's be very good with our data, let's really target. And then lastly, I would just mention, also Learning Recovery is actually doing a couple of webinars around some of the PRCs we released, talking about targeting intervention on the website. One of the white papers is also about summer learning programs. So what we learned over the last 2 summers when deploying summer learning, how to build a good, impactful summer learning program. And so then understanding you have a little more than a year left now of ESSER 3 funding, so those funds need to be obligated.
Is there any way to track where you've seen exceptional growth from certain schools and what was done in those schools?
So this is a really tricky needle to thread. And part of that is the minute we do that, then we have access to all this data and then it becomes public record. And so you can use it the other way too, right? So then other individuals can then take that data and say, well, look at these schools that are failing and why they're so. We're actually trying to figure out a way in which to highlight districts themselves are actually going and charter schools are actually going to get data, right, that show schools that are showing outsized performance. And so I think once the data is deployed to the charter schools, you could actually work regionally with each other.
That's really what I was getting into, is that there's
Our team
somebody.
would be more than happy. I will gladly volunteer Kaylin and the OLR team to actually help you sift through the data if you need some support with that. That's part of what we're really trying to do, is create a network of resources for schools to do some data analysis.
One way maybe to do that is to not, you don't have to identify where it came from, identify
What
the
was used.
strategies.
Yeah, what was used.
So that we have access to the strategies that worked. And we don't necessarily have to know who used them, just the strategies that worked.
And we have a promising practices clearinghouse on the website as well, where you can find where we've been highlighting some of the different things happening across the state that you could also tap into for some of that.
What website?
It's called the Promising Practices Clearinghouse.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw, I mentioned this at the Ames conference to somebody on your staff. I'm going to do it again because I think it's worth saying. That promising practices idea, that needs to be a conference. And where the people who have done these things come and present, because we read it, but you know, it doesn't translate.
Yeah.
I need to be able to ask questions. I need you to tell me what you did. And
Yeah, I can talk about stuff, putting it in AIM, right, we could probably do a strand in AIM for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
that would be
We certainly
really
figure
helpful.
out additional ways to get that data, to get that available.
Awesome.
Get that available. And part of that is that we're also doing what we call ARP cohorts, and that's where we brought PSUs out to SAS for 4 days, and they meet as a
I saw
cohort
that.
to actually work through all of their data there, as well as talk through interventions and things, so. Very
Great.
hard to provide as much
You guys are
support
doing
as
good
possible
work.
can.
Yeah, the Office of Learning Recovery Edition was that was a big good thing for DPI.
Just a quick question. I echo, just how useful the data is and the presentation was so informative. Does it have any impact on revisions when it comes to testing and things like that? When you start seeing statistical anomalies, or just tests that maybe need more rigor, or tests that need different cut lines, or this and that, like anything in that world?
Yeah, so essentially every year we have a full team here at DPI that actually in accountability, that's what they do, test development, psychometrics on tests. So every test that comes in, one of the reasons you actually, tests are deployed in May into June, depending on the summer programming, but you don't get your data back until the fall. It's because of all that work that's happening in the background to ensure the test is performing in the way that we expect the test to perform. So we have
But in
psychometricians who do
for
that.
instance, since the pandemic has started.
Yep.
And since presentations like this were happening, which student has always outperformed?
Yeah, that's more a product of standards as opposed to the test itself.
I echo Eric's question in that, it seems like if you go back 20 years, you could say fourth grade, seventh grade, there's certain tests that always seem to be different. It'd be interesting to know what, I mean, since we're getting so down into the data.
Yeah,
what-
so there is a little bit of anomaly. One of the reasons we used, just getting a little bit into the weeds, but when you look at the report, one of the reasons we used 2018 as the kind of normal year, business as usual year, is because 2019 we had an updated math test. And so every time you kind of put out a new test, you see this kind of slight dip in the score. And so it takes a recalibration, right? So, and we're not actually, they're not normed, so we're not norming those tests, right? And so that's not part of the process. It's just the new test and how it aligns to the standards and what teachers were teaching, right?
Yeah, which I think also gets to your school accountability piece, right? And judging schools in the early on series of tests as opposed to a multi-measure, multi-indicator model, which would actually then help kind of flatten that out a little bit when you see these test score anomalies.
Michael, I have a question. What are the criteria for urbanicity?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, sure. So, for the most part, those are provided by the federal government. They make designations that are largely based on two things: population density of a given geographic area and the distance from the closest city, if you will. So they roughly categorize them into town, suburb, rural, and city. In our report, we have also broken it out because some people were confused. Well, when you say city, do you mean the city school districts? So we've also provided city school districts as a separate thing. But largely, with the exception of the one that we create, that city school district group, they are based on population density, how many people live in the given finite area, and the distance from the largest city. Nearby city, excuse me.
Because most of our districts are counties,
That's right.
it's based on the county, it's on the entire county?
Yes, it is a county-wide designation. So for example, Mecklenburg County is going to be a large urban area. Alamance County, I believe, is either a suburb or actually a rural area that is closest to an urban area, which would be Greensboro. But you can if you think about towns and cities, how large they are and how far away from a big city they are, you can roughly estimate that.
It's a little bit of an inexact.
Yeah.
I understand.
But helpful.
The visualization of the data is very effective, very good.
Very clear.
I was curious about how you determine the units of measure, so that in some cases, if it's measured by 0.1%, and then in other cases, it's 0.4%, so the bars could explode or they could seem much smaller. You had to make those determinations to help us visualize the data. Can you say what kind of guided that decision?
I think I need a little bit more clarification on your question. You're talking about
Your units of measures for bar graphs, for instance,
The effect-
in some
the
cases.
effect size,
They're
yeah.
marked out by 0.4%, you go from 0.4 to 0.8, but in other cases, it's 0.15, 0.2, 0.25, so that, the data either shrinks or explodes based on those units of measure.
Because the measures, because we use like 0.5.
You go.
I was just curious because that's the effect that you give. Growth can appear larger, in some cases, or like less, depending on those measures.
Yes, I think I understand what you're referring to. So, are you saying that when we're looking at the bar graphs, the scale, if you will, of the graph itself may lead someone to a conclusion that may not be what the data actually suggests?
No, it really wasn't implying that. I just know that it's intentional, that you had to make intentional decisions about how to measure.
Yeah.
And it varied. You didn't have one standard of measurement throughout all the graphs. It varied, so I just wondered what guided that. If you knew, if not, that's okay.
Is that our decision or staff's decision? What, on the unit of measure, it's not the any unit of measurement across.
The range
Yeah.
of the axis on the bottom?
Mhm.
Okay, so there are kind of two different sets of graphs here, which maybe I should have clarified.
True.
SAS, our partner in Cary, created all the ones with the gray bar graphs, the purples and blues on the rights and lefts. They are giving a specific range that they chose to be standard across all graphs. So when you open the report and you're looking at all the graphs, that x-axis at the bottom will always, or it should always range, according to my best knowledge, from negative 0.08 to 0.08, left to right. That was a decision that SAS made, the rationale being so that when readers flip through the report, they don't have to reorient their brain to the size of the bars. So if the range is constant across bars,
Exactly.
then you can just compare the bars across plot to plot and make your differences there. When I made the the last two graphs, the magnitude of recovery graphs, I have in fact scaled those differently, and I chose that scale to help us more precisely look at differences between bars. So that was an intentional decision that I made.
Well, and the colors help too,
Thank you, they do.
because you are identifying for us what is large, what is medium, what is small. So that's helpful too.
And,
It is very effective.
and so there are lots of intentional decisions that get made. I think we've been very careful around data integrity, right? So we'll stand behind the quality of the report and the data itself. Using 2018 as kind of the business as usual year, that's kind of a decision we've made. We're also talking about a definition around recovery. At what point, we've heard this a lot, like when can we say kids recovered? And so we're having that conversation now about what that should look like, and we'll eventually kind of plant a flag in the sand and say, this is the metric. When we hit this point, we will say kids in North Carolina recovered. So we're working through the data to be able to do that now, but a lot of this is, there's a little bit of kind of subjectivity to some of it, but clearly the data itself is unapproachable.
Do you know if anybody in the state of North Carolina is looking at how students are doing who left us during this? So these kids all are still in the system and we've still got time with them, but the ones who got out before we could fix it.
Yeah, really, that is a great question. It is a very hard research question for a couple of reasons. One is we don't have access
They go everywhere.
to those children right there. They're no longer in our kind of power schools. The other challenge is students who leave public schools aren't necessarily taking any course in a grade. They're not. So we don't have a way to have access to their data, even if they are. In fact, they're supposed to be taking kind of a national norm, but I'm not sure that data set exists anymore, so that's really hard. We did, also Learning Recovery actually did partner with North County Collaboratory, and we put out nearly $8 million in research grants. And so we have 20 different studies going on right now in the state looking at various aspects of recovery. And one of those actually does look at students who left the public schools. And then also looked at among those students who returned. The challenge there is that that's likely going to be a little more probably qualitative. There'll be some quantitative data, but very difficult to measure, but we are also interested in that as well.
So will you ever predict that our kids have recovered?
So when I took this job a little over 2 years ago, one of the things you may have heard me said was I very much expected that the impact of the pandemic for our students would last upwards of 4 years. And that I did believe that after 4 years, we would be able to say, if given, right, that we used our money appropriately, we targeted interventions to identify the right students, that we would make recovery, as opposed to, I think, what some of the national press has said around students and recovery, that, in fact, I refuse to talk about a lost generation, lost kids, or any of that.
Well, with that question, I think, again, I don't want to sound like a brokered record, but this kind of data that talks about the growth of students versus the scores that schools are earning or whatever, I think it's an important additive to the story, because I think all we're doing right now is focusing on A, B, C, D, F.
Yeah. And I don't know how you make this easier for the public to understand, but we need to do that because people are going for the easy thing.
And when we actually press released this when it came out, we actually press released the magnitude of recovery graph, and we've done a lot to try to talk about the gains that students are making, the work that teachers are doing. And that, yet we still have a ways to go, right? There's work to be done in the state, but we're making progress. That's really the message that I'm trying to send, is we're making progress. And we're being very intentional, and schools are being very intentional with how they're using their phones. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Also, I want to say I appreciate that you drill down and show us charter data. That's really, really helpful.
Yes, it is.
Ashley, can we take a 10-minute bio?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. We will be, let's start back at 10:15 with RTO.
Congrats, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Asking a year for now.
They're like different, they're different New Jerseys depending on where you go.
So many pages.
Say what?
I have so many pages open.
Yeah, you too. That's every day.
Slow me down.
Every day.
Get rid of some of these.
Data science, make minor, right? Yeah.
So next is RTO, right? Do we have, but there's no serious concerns on that. So that's essentially 11. Is ALA on this list? No, not ALA. Not ALA. I'm like, dude, most of the state went underwater.
That's right, exactly.
Drowning.
Hey,
Oh, hi.
these are for you.
Oh, thank you so much. That is
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I have one gift for you. Or I want you to open it if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Every other class.
And I'll just leave this here.
Every, EOC, EOG, not ACT.
Many moves sitting
You
here.
could get a
I
grade
know.
and change it.
A lot of big decisions.
Oh my gosh, have happened over time. But the part I have to look at, I thought back to said, what does that say about how old you were when you came here? And I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm sure you won't miss that train ride.
That, I've said when I get off the train tomorrow, I'm saluting the train.
Yeah, there you go. I don't blame you one bit. Don't judge it based on the box. I had to try to find a box last night. Let me see. Let me see if I can look at mine.
Oh my goodness.
We had our highest
Take a print.
and they beat our
Yeah.
Oh, that is lovely. Thank you so much. That is lovely.
I designed that.
Did you really?
Yeah. And I had a graphic designer take my idea and put it together. And yeah, it's a custom design North Carolina themed charter school scarf. Just like this one. So I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much. And I-
Congratulations.
Thank you. I think it's a congratulations. I'm not so
It
sure.
is.
You know,
Well, yeah.
did it for a long time. It's such a part of my life. And I think I'll miss it for a while, but I think that I'll get over it.
I think you will too.
Yeah, it's not like
It's a lot of work, I'm sure.
It's a lot. So I think next year when I don't have apps to do, that I may actually figure out I'm not always behind.
Yeah, there you go. I
You know,
know.
so
And you won't have to deal with reporting to the State Board of Education.
well that looks like that's gonna go away.
I know. We are so hopeful and working hard on that.
But it really does it ups the responsibility. We can't blame stuff on the state board, and bad decisions will come back on us.
That's right.
And
They
we've
will.
made some over time. Some of the things that the state board did, like some of the stuff that they decided to just buck us on for no reason, is not legit. You know, some of that stuff
I know.
is just not legit. They were just being annoying because they could. And Alex, this isn't gonna happen.
I know it is.
And I wonder,
Then he stood
I
up.
doubt
and
it.
then they lost their way because there was no point from her point of view. There was no point to fight this war. You know, and that's
But if it doesn't pass, I'm concerned without her being
I'm being told by the lobbyists and all these people that it should go.
Well, it got taken off of the Senate Ed Committee meeting last week, off of their
That I
agenda.
didn't- that I
Yes,
didn't.
yes. And so when that happened, I talked to our lobbyist about it, and he said that they removed it because there was still some opposition.
Some pushback.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess because they just want the state board to have say. But it's not necessary. All they really, first of all, look at the chances with all the stuff and other stuff the state board has to do. They're reading all the 20-some acts that we're actually reading.
There's no way.
So why do you want to take our work for it?
And I always say that the Charter School Advisory Board could not put more scrutiny on petitioners and these potential founding boards than you do. I think you prove through their paces, and rightfully so. We're talking about millions of dollars.
And we don't want to find out down the road that we gave it to one person.
Well, it's not an exact science, right?
For the most part. And in all, with the exception of I didn't get that, but with the exception of like when it turned out to be a problem, it wasn't because we get to we had nothing to do with it, you know, with the exception of that contract. I see it, I said, you don't realize that $350,000 houses in New York, and everybody says it's the same contract that National Heritage has. I said, yeah, but National Heritage is a corporation. These are two people, and this is going into their homes. And just that in and of itself was right for correction. Right.
That board could not have been more disengaged.
They just tossed it to Mexico,
And that's all the way to what do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's exactly what happened there.
and which is unfortunate because then they ended up with 600 kids in the school, and we have yet to put a school back there to serve them. But we couldn't let them keep going.
No way. Anyway, thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much. This is
everything.
lovely.
This is
Lovely.
I hope
Thank
you
you.
enjoy it.
Thank you.
I can't wait for it. And you can't tell because it's tied, but it's a custom design North Carolina themed charter school.
Hold people accountable after the pandemic.
You do. Well, we sell them as a little fundraiser. So if you want, I'll bring it to you, okay? All right. Good to see you.
And as much as we try to hold our children accountable, it matters not because the school is accountable. And they are kids who, when he stands up there and says, I refuse to believe because we lost children. Obviously, but we're working hard to make sure it's true, but I'm telling you, and you can look at it. These children, we're like clearly a much smaller organization, but we have to first right to like, because they didn't really get a year and a half.
Look what the allowance they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. And a scarf. They designed a scarf.
Okay, here we go. It is time.
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
Shows close.
Here we go. All right, so we're ready to talk about the Ready to Open Schools for 2023.
Right. Good morning, board. So nice to be with you for the third time, sharing some great updates that we have for you. Next slide. Oh, Natasha Norns from the Office of Charter Schools, consultant, with you again. We have 4 schools today for you to ask questions after this data is presented to you. And that piece, I have for them to all come towards the end of this and presenting on their enrollment at 75%, their facilities and some updates regarding their ECOs, regarding their budgets that they've all submitted for RTO2, and their progress as of today. Data coming in even last night at 9 p.m. So, all these schools that are 7 of the RTO schools completed RTO 1 and 2 of the planning year. RTO items were due on May 19th, and our Office of Charter School Consultants, along with the Exceptional Children's Division, reviewed over, I want to say 700 different documents regarding policies, procedures, requirements, insurance liability certificates. We have done it all. So again, 4 of them are here to present to discuss ratings that they received, not emerging on. And these same schools, these 4, along with 3 other new charter school leaders, will be attending our institute tomorrow and Thursday, all day, going over refreshers for EBOS and finance and exceptional needs and home-based teacher evaluations, you name it, we're covering it. So as you're aware, we have made schools aware that they need to have a facility contingency plan to move to another location or adjust their academic calendars in case for any reason their facility is not ready to open, and we've been aiming for July 31st. So in the report I'm about to share with you, next slide, we'll start with Mountain City Public Montessori. Their contingency plan will be to adjust their calendar to shift 2 weeks at the beginning of the year to the end of the year, but they are on track to open with their ECO by July 1st. They've already reached their enrollment and at 100%, as well as their budget for break even and regular budget. I'm really, really confident this school is going to do great things. The next school, we have Aspire Trade High School. Just got off the phone with them yesterday as well. Jennifer Nichols, their board chair, super confident in their opening plan. Their contingency is that they are also adjusting their calendar at the beginning of the year and towards the end of the year if necessary. They actually plan on having their ECO by July 31st or sooner. I talked with her yesterday. Some of you might know the area where they're opening in Charlotte, and we discussed, because there wasn't actually a plan for their traffic support necessary, and I was a little concerned about the corner that the buses will be exiting out of, but she has created her traffic study with the architect, and they're confident there will be no hazards with exiting buses or entering buses. So that was the one area still needing some tweaking in their RTO2, as well as their facility ECO. Next up, I'm moving one more slide ahead, and then we'll come back to Movement School Northwest. So this was one of the schools that came to us in March asking for a reduction in enrollment. They have met their 75% requirement with the lower 125 ADM. And they have finalized their lease. They're waiting on inspections. They believe they'll have a temporary certificate of occupancy on August 1st. And their contingency is to move to the Movement Middle Freedom School if necessary, which already has their ECO, and they've already made contingency plans to communicate with families if that is absolutely a dire need. to the next 4 schools who will be presenting to you to answer any of your questions regarding their areas of less than emerging or quality on their ratings from OCS review. First up, we have Wayne STEM Academy, and they have a new board chair who's here to meet you today, as well as their head of school, who's done a lot of work on all of their RTO2 documentation. So their contingency plan is an adjusted calendar based on the information that Dr. Todd Bourget, the school director, can give you more information regarding the facility needing 2 modular units and their contingency plan being an adjusted calendar. Also, one area to note that is still being finalized is their Exceptional Children's Division documentation, which needed to go back for a second review from the division, and they're going to discuss their progress on that today. So I'm welcoming Dr. Todd Bourget and their new board chair, Christian Dumont.
Good morning.
Thank you, Natasha. Yes, here to answer any questions with reference to those 2 areas. I can share with reference to the Exceptional Children's Plan. We received feedback on Thursday that our language in some areas was a little too concise. I am a certified special education director licensed in North Carolina. So we actually had all of the changes updated before, I think, Monday. We found that one of the areas, for example, was in discipline, where we had focused our response, obviously, on understanding what discipline looks like specifically in the exceptional children's realm, thinking that since the handbook had already been approved, that the MTSS model that we have for behavioral RTI had already been reviewed. So we just put it all back in nice, broad language and informational. So we're not anticipating any issues, as that'll be reviewed and returned. I believe we received notification it will be returned by Wednesday. With regards to facilities, as you see on the screen, we do have 2 modular facilities coming, 16 total classrooms. The first one is actually, should be on-site in the next 10 days. The final one should be on-site by July 1st. And we're anticipating all inspections and July 16th with a final ECO no later than July 31st. We're in, although we said we're in weekly contact with our developers, we're actually in just about daily contact. Of course, that anticipation is not healthy for anyone, as we're trying to get location we have location to have those facilities in place and ready for the 240 students that we have committed to the school, along with over, I think we may have 3 positions available right now, and 2 of them are for specials, and we're well over, I think, 87% licensed staff.
Very good.
So we're excited. We're just as nervous maybe as Dr. Natasha showed with references. We want that facilities to be there yesterday, but we understand the process.
Any questions for Wayne STEM?
Are you still working with Legacy Impact?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you say what percentage of staff is hired? What percentage of staff is hired?
Has your
They
board
only have
done a
2
full
positions
rotation? Neither of you
And
were
87%
original
are
board members,
certified.
right, when the charter started?
He said one of
Are there
them
any
is
original
special,
board
is a
members
special.
on the board?
Want to respond to that?
Yes, there are, and I took over from the board chair, Rhonda Coyne, about a month ago. Rhonda's still on our board. She serves as an investigative officer in Wendell, and so just with her schedule coming up in the summer and with how much we're in contact getting our facilities, she just
CO is expected? What date did you say?
It should be any later than July 31st.
July
So
31st.
as soon as that second learning cottage arrives on site, we'll have all of the inspections.
Learning cottage.
Learning cottage.
Call that trailer.
That trailer, that's, yeah.
Well framed, sir. Well framed.
Well, Frank. Who's that marketing guy? Good.
Any other questions for Wayne Stone? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Ferdinand and Mr. Dion. And next up, we have our, this is the fifth school, Bonnicombe Leadership. Bonnicombe is also a Mecklenburg County school, and as of yesterday, I believe at 12 p.m., their ADM bumped up to get them their 75% enrollment. And their contingency, they do have a traffic study that was completed, and approved by the DOT. They're in final negotiations for their lunch vendor. That was as of last week. These were areas where, again, they were not emerging or quality on their reviews. And their contingency plan will be a calendar adjustment for the sheer purpose that their population is far too large to find a new location. And we have their board chair here today, along with Tina Litchford, who is Marty McCarthy, their board chair, Tina Litchford, who was assisting with RTO as well, and their school director, Jennifer Montana.
And Tina Letchworth.
Come on up. Hi, Greg.
There's Marty. When you say calendar adjustment, when are you supposed to start, and then when would you start?
Sure, we already did the calendar adjustment to start as well, so we're starting on August 21st. We would just add that time on the end if we, by any chance, did not get our certificate of occupancy.
Okay, so I guess the question what I'm thinking is, how far, if you start August 21st, you're pretty much starting when everybody else is starting, not a big deal. If you had to push it back even 2 weeks, now we're after Labor Day, and you're probably gonna lose a lot of kids. So, kind of, what are you thinking in terms of late start?
Well, we're feeling very confident that we're gonna have our certificate of occupancy by July 31st.
So you're planning the August 21 date?
Not so much a question, but just a comment that maybe for the office. There's some conflicting data in a couple of the documents that we've received. In the slide deck, it shows that their break-even point for their enrollment from a budget perspective is 950 students, which they're well over that, so congratulations. But in another document that was uploaded into eBoard, let me find that, it shows their break-even is at 1525.
Big difference.
That's
So
a
go
big
back
difference.
at 950.
1525 was the original year one CSADM.
Okay, but I'm just pointing it out from before anything is submitted to the state board, that it's showing the
Yes.
break even at 1525.
Mhm.
And the other one, again, is more clerical, is showing final facility inspection. Okay, so that's fine, I'm good on that, never mind, that first data point.
For the calendar purposes, are you guys doing 185 days, or are you doing
Hours.
the hours?
Hours.
Good. That'll help too a little bit. How many days of school are in your regular calendar? How many days are you going to school next year? Do you know that?
I don't,
And the only reason I'm asking the question is you guys, if there is any kind of delay whatsoever, you probably have built-in days with,
We're building hours.
hours with the number of days that you have.
we're over on hours.
Right.
And we have very little early release days, so to constitute that
And if you have early release days, you can modify those and make them whole days and make up the time.
Yes.
On your staggered start times, what are they for which groups?
Sure, so the elementary is gonna start at 7:45. And the high school start at 8:30. And the times are because our sister school, the Hospital Academy, we have students that will be rising seventh graders and above. And we have promised families that we would provide a shuttle from one campus to the other.
What's your dismissal times?
Sure, so the elementary is 2:45 and the high school is 3:30.
Out of curiosity, if your break-even number is 950 and it's year one of the school, why are you guys almost doubling it at a 1725 ADM? I mean, I know the easy answer is to serve more kids, but in year one, why not scale back and get it right and then scale up as it goes on?
Mr. Sanchez,
Are they
so
Charter one?
this is our year two
Are they Charter
enrollment,
one?
1725, and we're at 75%. We're having about 200 students a month, and when we get our break-even number there, one of the things we did is Charter One doesn't take a fee for our management services, so that's how we get to the break-even number of 900. And so, we've got the experience of both Wakecraft and ALA Johnston of opening with 2,000 and 1,800 students each. And there have been a few bumps this year, but all in all is, we talked to the high school graduates this morning, it's been a good year. And so,
I didn't understand your point, I'm sorry. When you said, when you hit the break-even number, the management company doesn't take fees?
no. So the way we get the 900 break-even number
Okay.
is we take the management fee out
Oh,
of the
okay,
budget,
okay.
right?
So it's not,
So we're the last one paid anyway, and so, one way we get the 900 is to take the 15% fee out. We gotta make sure, we've got about a $45 million investment in facilities. And, we've gotta be committed to paying.
so what's the break-even number with the management fee in it? Is it back to the application of the 1,500 plus or
I
whatever?
think it was, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I think it was in the 1150 range. I don't know if that math adds up, but that seems to be, where we were at.
How has opening the new school, since both of these schools are in Huntersville, how has that affected enrollment at the original school?
Jennifer, you wanna take that one?
It hasn't, because of the locations of each of them, they're about 5 miles apart. There's a niche for the students at the Classical Academy, and then there's the niche, of course, for those that are closer to where the Leadership Academy is gonna be. The families that are staying at the Classical Academy were very excited at the fact that we were offering a shuttle, so that didn't force them to leave the school that they have been at or are very comfortable at, because we're providing that shuttle for their older students, because it'll then just be K-6.
Any other questions for Bonnie Cohn? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for catching that, Mr. Friend. We had a little bit of discussion about 1525 prior because of their delay, and I think maybe with all of the jargon I've been putting out, I must have just copied and pasted. Okay, so next we have our friends returning from Legacy Classical Academy in Rockingham County, and as of June 2nd, they reached their 75% enrollment with 150 students, could have gone up one by yesterday even. Their contingency is an alternative location that has already had an identified ECO if necessary. And Mr. Purnell and their head of school, Renee Clifford, are here to join us with any questions that you may have.
Good morning.
Morning.
Marshall said this or not, but yesterday we had our CO inspection.
Oh, okay.
Everything passed until they were going out the door. Got inspector hit the button for the emergency lights and it didn't work. So he gave us a temporary CO, that's being worked on today. And we expect that, probably this week. It could take 2 weeks dealing with government agencies, so it may take a little longer than a day or two. It should. Our enrollment's good. Based on the history of our enrollments, we've had, we're at 151 right now. We've got 4 that have applied and are in the process, which will get us to 155. And based on our history, I calculate at least 20 per month. We've had more than that every month, but basing it on 20, that should get us up close to 190 students, 90 to 95, which is awesome. We have submitted budgets for everything from, I think, 150, 160, 180, and 200. In anticipation of, we didn't know what was gonna happen. But right now, I think we've done everything. When we get our CO, we're good to go.
What's the staffing situation? What percentage of your positions are fully hired?
Staff, go right ahead. Our brilliant principal will answer that for us.
So, out of 13 positions total, we've hired 9, so we just have a couple more that I need to fill. And I have, one I've interviewed that's in the pipeline, made the offer, we have a couple more interviews set up.
Thank you.
Two set up, sure, absolutely.
And the most important one of those is our EC teacher
Yeah.
who's in place, which we were, I think everybody's concerned. And we were very fortunate that that's already in place with a great lady.
When is your start date? The
August-
start date.
August 17th is our first day of school. Did I understand you correctly that you have the temporary CEO? You're just waiting for the final inspection?
Yes.
Okay. So
We got that yesterday.
No, it's okay, no, actually, they told us that they would send us the temporary ECO today.
Okay.
And then as soon as the facility we're renting has got to change out the batteries in the emergency lighting.
Okay.
And they're gonna come back and do a quick check, but we're expecting the permanent one, next week, early next week.
And that's the church I saw, right?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
correct, yes.
But you're good to go with the TCO,
Yeah.
so. Any other questions for Legacy?
Have a great start to the school year.
Thank you.
You're all invited to our grandbrother. Part of the ceremony, how about that?
Send us the invite.
Send the invite, yep.
Yeah, absolutely,
Thank
10 a.m.
Oh, I was about to say,
Y'all show up at 10 p.m.
I did, thank you.
Making great progress here. So lastly, our next school, the 7 out of 7, we have Saba School of the Arts, Fine Arts for Boys, and look at that data, y'all. 80%. They're at 80% of
Awesome.
enrollment.
Very good, 'cause I
I'm
think
pleased to
every-
welcome today, their board chair, Allison Austin, to see you, as well as
Is hers
Lindsay
updated,
Schumer
maybe?
and her other board members. Just to give you a heads up, their contingency is that they will have an adjusted calendar. However, they already have their ACO from the previous, location being a daycare that they are leasing. They needed to add some language, legal language in their ACO, or excuse me, in their building lease, which I've been assured has already happened and just needs to be uploaded, as well as,
Natasha, yeah, go ahead.
Clarifying question. The documents,
another
the
typo?
documents we show say enrollment's at 61%. You said
And
it was over
you said
80.
was it
Oh,
80?
yes, so this came yesterday. This
Okay.
was 9 PM last night.
Mhm.
And just a quick, note, you all know how quickly everything is changing right now. And they just had an event and things are happening late in the evening when I'm asking for updates along with every other meeting throughout the day. And this just happened yesterday. So, Valencia can talk to you more about that.
Okay.
But she does attribute it to the actual sharing of the address in the facility. And you're there to answer any more questions that
And
you
what was the
have.
number, 80?
She said 80%. What's that number
what's
in
the
terms of
number?
enrollment?
93, oh, sorry, they have 93 students enrolled.
Okay.
No, what is the percentage?
80.
80, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As my colleague would say, terrific Tuesday. I don't know how she keeps up with all the adjectives. Nonetheless, greetings from the School of the Arts for Boys Academy. Since the May meeting, we took your advice, and the advice was get students and get permits, right, based on our showing up here. We do have our head of school, Mrs. Valencia Toomer, and some of our other board members, as well as our vice chair. He's online, Dr. Brent Anderson, and Ms. Sandra Gardner. I don't even know if I said my name, but I'm Dr. Allison Austin. Pleasure to be with you this morning. Just gonna jump in. I know you see here, it says K through 6, but our grade levels are 3 through 6. And enrollment numbers, as I mentioned before, as we met in May, the numbers, we reported 56% enrollment, which is 65 students that we reported, and that was out of our 116 AM. And science report, as of today, 80% enrollment, 93 students out of the 116 ADM, which is a 24% increase since our May meeting and above the suggested 75% ADM. And so, like Natasha mentioned, we've had a number of community events, and I think we mentioned those in our last meeting. But once we left this meeting, we were able to sign our lease, get that information in the leasing document. We've been working with the Legacy Impact organization, and the representative is here today to answer any questions you might have about our facility. But once we were able to announce that we were actually moving into a facility or having a secure place, interest and just continued support exploded from that point on. We actually had an event on site at that facility where we invited folks to come and to learn about who we are, what we do, some of the families who had already signed up. So we had a community event. We've been attending some of the community events in Chatham County and surrounding counties. So those have definitely helped. And the most effective has been word of mouth because people believe in the mission and vision of SAGA. In terms of our marketing strategy, we've been working with Media Integrations, who has a long-standing relationships with other charter schools, and they have helped us put together a press release for local newspapers. We definitely have utilized social media, and we have a newsletter that is sent out to our students and anyone that might come by the events that we are at. That we're kind of gaining some interest. So all of those things we've been able to utilize and have been very effective. Even though we have the 80% enrollment, we will continue to participate in community events. We actually have some coming up because we do realize based on historical trends, there may be some attrition and we don't want to get to a point where we're impacted by that attrition. So our goal is to go well above the 80% that we already have and continue to be in the community, to engage in the community. Regarding our facility, we do have our, as Natasha mentioned, certificate of occupancy for educational purposes on file. We have our health inspection and the fire inspections in process has been scheduled with the fire marshal. In terms of transportation plan, so we were able to collect the students, and out of those 93 students, 33%, which is 31 families, have indicated they will need transportation. And that's primarily in Pittsboro and Siler City, in Chatham County area. So we have mapped out that particular area, and we have indicated or kind of created 5 bus zone stops, and they will be throughout Pittsboro, Siler City, and one in Sanford. In terms of staffing, of course, we have our head of school, and more importantly, we do have EC teacher we have hired. The other 75% staff members are pending offers and have been identified for hire as well. And I will leave it open to questions that you might have for us. Oh, I did want to say, I know at the last meeting, towards the end, there were some concerns. As you can see, we have one delay. And it was the great 2020, which we call the great pandemic, right, started. And life itself changed for all of us, right? But I heard something, I know there was some concern about 3 years in, but 3 years in, we're finally here at this moment. And I heard someone say the other day, you have shortcuts and you have detours. The shortcut gets you there quicker or faster, and the detour is meant to get you there safely. And so I think throughout these 3 years, there have been plenty of detours. There have been roadblocks, there have been no's, there have been a maybe yes, and then there's a no. And then there's all this uncertainty. There was chaos, life had changed, education had changed as we knew it. So there's a lot of things that, of course, all of you guys and all of the other schools have faced, but we were able to continue to press forward, continue to be resilient. We have a working board. We are excited about what is happening in Chatham County. We are looking forward to building Saba legends and people who can be model citizens and give back. This is about generations to come. And so we are excited about opening in the fall. And I'm going to stop talking now and give you guys the floor.
You mentioned your bus cluster stops.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you not have any in Moncure? Or do you have any kids coming from Moncure?
Right now, we have 3 students in Moncure, and none of them indicated that they would require transportation. So from Moncure to Pittsburgh is about 8 miles, and they did not indicate that they needed transportation.
Yeah, I was the voice last month that raised concerns about, it wasn't it wasn't an indictment on all the work you've done over 2.5 years, not that at all. You've done a lot. You've done a lot of community meetings. But it has to manifest itself into enrollments, because at the end of the day, that's what your school needs, right?
And I'm glad you brought it up, because it gives us an opportunity to reflect on just how far we've come.
And I'm just, I'm pleased today to see that you're at 93, and hopefully even some more coming in between now and your start date. I would just say from experience, don't ever stop doing those community meetings. Hopefully you'll have a day where you have hundreds of students on your wait list, and you're still going to want to do those community meetings. So don't let that stop you.
Yeah, we're gonna put that down on the calendar. We're gonna have hundreds of students. Do we have that in our meetings? We're gonna have hundreds of students in the future.
Again, I just want to make sure we have the right dates here before this goes to the state board. It shows final facility inspection June 30th, but you already have your CO.
Yes, we do have our current educational certificate of occupancy. We have the health inspection.
Okay.
The fire inspection is due, so the current owner is not going to complete that before she leaves the building on June 30th. So when we occupy the space July 1, the fire marshal is aware to do that final inspection.
Carla. Someone else? Does someone else?
Someone might needs to mute.
Oh, no, but that was
I do that. I have to exit out and go back in.
That's At a prior meeting, when the ADM was 116, we had a note that the break-even was 103. And it's been adjusted now to 88. I'm just wondering what adjustments were made to lower that break-even?
So the 103 was submitted because I think at the time we had not received information about the access grant.
Okay.
So it's the access grant that made the
Okay.
difference between the two numbers.
Very good.
Have
What's
you
your
thought about
opening date?
diversifying your board a little more?
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll go. Have you thought about diversifying your board just a
August
little more?
14th.
Diversifying our.
Thank you.
As far as inviting kids from all different walks of life.
Yes, so, we have a retreat that will be coming up, and there are a couple of board members, one that is very connected to the Hispanic community. We're interested in being part of the board, so we're talking about that retreat. There's, thing we mentioned in terms of diversifying, making sure that we're attracting the boys that are representative of Chatham County for sure, but the surrounding counties.
Good. Good idea.
And I'd also like to add that we have members of the community that actually are on our particular committees, but cannot invest the time in being a full service board member. So we do have adequate representation on our committees. We have a Hispanic liaison that works with us, but she didn't want to commit to being on the actual board. So we do have some of those representations on our committee, and we're continuing to want to advertise, but I would like to say that the board that we do have has been there since the beginning, has remained committed, and we're very strategic in making sure that we do identify the correct people that can serve on the board and support the mission and vision of the school. But we do have that diversity amongst our committees, and we're continuing to advertise that for our board as well.
I share this is only from experience, only from opening up a charter school this year. We had over 300 applicants. The first day of school, we had 242 kids show up. So you're 5 students away from the break-even number. Something looking back, I wish we would have done is right before school opened up to have some sort of event to pull them in to make sure, yes, these students are coming. So I would think about that, and also if they're coming from the traditional school system and not another charter school, they think school starts August 23rd. Your first day of school sets your budget for the rest of the year. So everybody needs to be there day one. So really do think about something right before schools open up to bring everybody in and say, check our boxes, do we have everybody we thought, and then start making calls in, as opposed to like we did, first day of school, where are you at?
Any other questions for Saba? Well, congrats. This was a long road, but it looks like it's actually gonna happen.
Long road, and we realize that the real work begins with the boys moving forward, so thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
So we have to vote?
Yeah, we do have to vote. So now, Ashley, we have to vote on the whole thing now, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
and you
pull
have
out.
one recusal, so you'll have to pull out Bonnie Cone.
Okay.
Also to note, the delay year schools that started in RTO, there are 7 of those schools. There were 14 to start this RTO process. Nolanda Academy, Greenville Prep, Go Big, Great Opportunities and Balanced Innovation for Girls, Norfolk Academy, West Triangle High School, Honor Prep, Charter School, Dogwood Classical Academy. And those schools are going to start RTO again in September. Some of them are actually listening today to start the process of understanding what the final reviews and presentations are all about. And we will be adding the new RTO cohort, Liberty Classical. There's 3 movement schools, Flat Rock, and there's one more, and I can't remember their name. Agape. So thank you all. Corrections definitely will be made. That is what I'm doing today. But I just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve Mountain City Montessori, Aspire Trade, Wayne STEM, Movement School Northwest, Legacy Classical, and School for the Arts for Boys to open status to the State Board of Education to open this fall.
A second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Ashley, can we take a roll call vote?
Yes. Stephen Gay. Looks like he logged off. Okay. Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Rita Hare.
Aye.
Hilda Parlay.
Opposed.
Cheryl Turner.
Aye.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
And I'd like to make a motion that we approve Bonnie Cone Classical for opening in the 23-24 school year.
Leadership again.
Second?
Bonnicom Leadership.
Okay, leadership. Yeah, classical's already open.
Sorry, one ship leader, yeah.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Hey. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Okay, hold on.
You wanted to make sure we open the right school?
Bruce Friend.
Aye.
Rita Hare.
Aye.
Cheryl Turner.
Aye.
Todd Godby.
Aye.
Eric Sanchez.
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
All right, all RTO schools, we will congratulations, we will see you over the next 2 days for lots of learning, and then these recommendations are taken to State Board July 6th, as you know. So we will be in contact before then, so I can get the latest information before presenting to the board. All right. Next, we have MTSS. We have some DPI staff.
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Angel Goodwine-Bax, and I am the Integrated Academic and Behavior Systems Team Lead, and I am excited to be here today. I have with me in the room Amy Miller, who is our District and School Improvement IAPS consultant, and our two charter consultants, our charter consultant in the East, Rhonda Harrell, and in the West, Ashley Springs.
Morning.
So we're excited to join you today to share and launch of our Integrated Academic and Behavior Systems Team Differentiated Support Plan for supporting PSUs in installing and sustaining a multi-tiered system of support, which is MTSS, for school improvement. Today we will share a big picture overview of the charter school support our team is currently providing and the additional support we will begin providing to select schools during the 23-24 school year. I will refer you to the guided notes that are included in your materials and for you today, and this presentation is also linked in those materials as well. Before we begin, I want to introduce the rest of my team who is not with us here today, but I have the privilege and pleasure of leading these leaders in the Integrated Academic and Behavior Systems team that you see represented here on this slide. We have 8 fabulous regional consultants serving every traditional district in the state across the 8 state board education regions. In addition to that, we have 2 to fully support all of our PSUs. We have the 2 amazing IAPS consultants dedicated solely to supporting charter and non-traditional PSUs across our state who were introduced to you earlier. Rhonda provides support in the East and Ashley provides support in the West. Their role is to assist charters in installing all components of a successful MTSS framework for school improvement. Finally, we have 5 statewide consultants that provide specific strategic support, as you can see here. So before we start talking about our support, we want to make sure that we take a moment to ensure that there's common understanding of a North Carolina MTSS. So we have the definition here on the next slide, and I'll give you a moment to read that. MTSS is a framework that schools use to organize their school systems in such a way that enables them to meet the needs of all students academically and behaviorally. Within a high-functioning MTSS framework, schools use data to constantly evaluate what is working and what is not working in order to maximize student growth for each and every student. Next slide, please. North Carolina's MTSS model is built on 6 critical components. These 6 critical components are essential for a high-functioning system that will improve student outcomes for each and every student. When we think about MTSS, or a multi-tiered system of support, most individuals in education think only of that critical component that you see at the top of this graphic, that's often represented by the layered triangle. Although this is a defining feature of the model, it must include all other 5 critical components to be truly effective. The handout linked in your slides, in this slide, gives you a little bit more information about those 6 critical components. But let's go a little bit deeper into the model as we ask schools to use for each and every student to support them. As I indicated, MTSS is built on 6 theoretical components. Each must exist to have a sustainable system and successful implementation. The support that we have been providing for over 10 years has been focused on these 6 critical components. In addition to those components, there are 4 essential elements that are the ongoing visible activities in an MTSS. Without these 4 elements, you are not doing MTSS. These 4 elements live within the 6 critical components and provide us with a tangible way to help schools install the framework. You can see here, they include screening, tiered instruction, progress monitoring, and database decision making. And finally, the triangle. This is simply a visual representation of how we allocate resources to provide multiple layers of support to meet all students' needs. Within MTSS, the green triangle at the bottom represents what schools provide to each and every student for academics and behavior. The yellow layer is an additional support of intervention for academics and behavior that some students will need. And that red layer is the most intensive support of intervention for academics and behavior that a few students will need. So now that we know the what of the model that we are advocating for schools to use to meet these needs for each and every student, let's talk about how we as an IAPS team support and will be supporting schools in their implementation of MTSS. Next slide, please. So if we as a state team are committed to this multi-tiered model to support all students, we should be committed to providing our support to schools in a layered continuum. Our support model for charters to assist them in implementation is grounded in the foundational core support we provide through our amazing charter consultants, Rhonda Harrell and Ashley Springs. This support includes meeting with charter school contacts 3 times per year in implementers meetings, statewide and regional professional development, technical assistance, coaching, and provisions of resources such as data tools and data systems, and finally, customized professional learning and coaching based on the school's individual's needs. Rhonda and Ashley also partner and work collaboratively with the Office of Charter Schools to provide support, technical assistance, and common language and understanding during the OCS office hours and ready-to-open activities. Additionally, there is OCS staff partnering with our Check and Connect efforts, which is a student engagement, attendance, and academic support that is provided to secondary students, and our regional SEL teams. This is represented here. All of these things are represented in that green-based triangle of our support. As a result of this support, we have many charters implementing the framework and attaining amazing outcomes. However, we also have many schools, both traditional and charter, that are not yet fully implementing. We acknowledge that schools are working very hard to improve outcomes in the face of this ever high staff turnover and student need. To increase our support for schools, we are providing additional support for some charters beginning next year. Our additional support to schools is represented in this graphic by the yellow and red triangles. This support will be in addition to the core support and will be a concrete intervention for selected schools focused on installing the 4 essential elements that I discussed earlier: screening, tiered support, progress monitoring, and database decision making, beginning with a targeted content area. Schools will choose an area to focus on for the year that allows them to attach the framework to something concrete. This can be literacy, math, behavior support, or attendance. Then we realized that there are some charters that will require even more intensive support, in addition to the supplemental and core support. Now I will turn the presentation over to our District and School Improvement IAPS consultant, Amy Miller, to discuss our support even more.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So as Angel said, as we go through each of those support layers from our IAPS team to charters and traditional LEAs across the state, first we'll dive a little bit deeper into this core support layer. So first, this core support will continue as Rhonda and Ashley have been providing. We actually do implementers meetings several times per year, and we have those that are charter specific, and we're really excited to let you know that we have about 140 charters who participate in each of those meetings on average across the state. So that's really, it speaks to the hard work that they've been doing in building those relationships, because it's completely optional. And then, so we'll continue with that support throughout next school year as well, that core support layer. If you want to go on. So what will be coming next year is this supplemental support. So this supplemental support will take the form of year-long virtual professional learning for school teams. And this will be specifically on installing those 4 essential elements of MTSS. And like Angel said, we'll attach it to one specific content area that the school will get to choose. So be it literacy, math, social emotional behavior support, attendance. And we hope to have about 30 to 40 charters participate in this additional support layer. So those charters were selected through a joint effort between our team and the Office of Charter Schools based on data such as where they fell on those low-performing school lists, the federal and the state lists, also interest, and also having participated already in our core support, because we do believe in order to really get the most from this supplemental support, they need to also be participating in our core support layer. So just a little bit more about what that supplemental support will look like next year. So again, this is in addition to our core support. And it's going to be professional learning as well as follow-up coaching in a virtual format for school teams. So following each part of the series, we hope that schools will have a tangible product that will serve as a part of their full implementation of the framework for school improvement. So you can see here the series will start with that introduction and ask them to choose a focus area for the year. Next, they'll cover best practices in universal screening systems. They'll define their data sources and as well as their data decision rules to really look at the health of their core support, what all students receive in that targeted focus area that they're focusing in on. They'll learn problem-solving protocols in order to really effectively look at their data for all students, some students, and a few students to make sure they're improving outcomes for all. And then they'll make sure that their core support is also well defined across their environments, their instruction, and their curriculum for all students. They'll make sure that they have well-defined intervention systems and well-defined methods for monitoring progress. And then finally, we'll also assist them at the end with really taking a step back to evaluate their progress for the year, see how it went, see what went well, what didn't go so well, what do they want to continue, and what do they want to stop. And then finally, that last layer of supports, we talked about core, we talked about supplemental, and we talked about now intensive. So a very small group of schools, traditional and charter, across the state will be invited to participate in one more layer of support with us. Again, this is completely optional. And that will consist of some more face-to-face, hand-over-hand data analysis coaching. So our team is really skilled in being able to look at data in an effective way to improve outcomes for kids. So teams will be invited to come meet with us 3 times per year to really have some hand-over-hand coaching on using their data effectively. And we do ask for a 2-year partnership agreement for those schools as well. Okay, so where we are right now, we held introductory webinars the week of May 8th with select charter schools that were invited to preview the model. We then have customized partnership agreements for those schools that were invited that were sent to them the following week, the week of May 16th. And we ask that they, if they are interested in participating in this additional support, that they return that partnership agreement by June 30th. And then those supplemental support webinars will begin in August. I think that's it. And there's a very large questions there if you have any questions.
I did want to say we really appreciate collaborating with this group because our office cannot do all things, and so we were really thankful for them, really thinking about charters and how it can work for charters, and we are certainly within the office highly suggesting and recommending to our low-performing and especially our continually low-performing schools that have been offered this support to take advantage of this support, and those are the sort of, that's the sort of information that we do want to kind of also bring to you during renewals, because it's important to know that DPI offers a plethora of support from these different divisions, and it is really up to the schools to take advantage of it when it's offered.
Thank you, Ashley.
And I would say you guys are very responsive. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we've found the same thing at Sugar Creek, that MTSS has been really, really super supportive.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hello. Nikki Nowinski from the Office of Charter Schools. I have 2 amendments before you today that require SBE approval. I will start with Union Day School's request to amend their mission statement. Theoretically, this will take a little less time than Dogwood Classical, so I'll start there. Union Day School is a public charter school in Union County, and they've been operating since 2016. Currently, they serve approximately 528 students in grades K-9. Union Day School is North Carolina's first charter school to receive International Baccalaureate authorization. They're super proud of that. And the Union Day School Board of Directors is requesting approval of a new mission statement that includes essential elements of the original mission and the required elements from the IB program. This also provides more clarity and focus on critical elements of the school's program and services, and allows them to have clarity when making decisions related to their mission and vision. The original charter mission statement is: Union Day School will deliver a rigorous and content-rich education to a diverse community of students in a shared conviction that each student will achieve high-quality academic success and enriched personal growth. The new mission statement that they are searching for approval for is that Union Day School's community works together to provide students rigorous content and a rich curriculum that is parallel with the International Baccalaureate ideals of the learner profiles. We strive to build a nurturing environment where each student demonstrates a spirit of respect, responsibility, global-mindedness, and commitment to academic and civic excellence. 2 of their board members are online if you have any questions for them or any questions for me.
Was the original mission of the school to be IB?
Their original mission was to attain the certification, so they've been working towards this.
And so now
Joanna and Joan, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Hi, my name's Joan Mazzu. I'm the board treasurer. I have been board treasurer since 2016, so have been living the IB challenge, let's just say. We have always wanted to be, it's in our charter, an IB MYP, which is the middle year programs. It's grades 6 through 10. And then the DP authorization, which is the diploma authorization, is grades 11 and 12. And since we have just gotten the M by MYP authorization, we have now started to work on the DP authorization. Since we were the first charter school in North Carolina to go through this process, it was a lot more challenging than we anticipated. They kept wanting us to change policies and procedures to match IB, but then that wouldn't match what we needed to do for the state. So we went back and forth a lot. The changing of the mission was critical because the IB learner profiles, there are 10 of them, is probably the most important thing to IB. And not only are these profiles really important, they need to see it working within the school building. And if anyone would like me to tell them what those 10 are, I'd be glad to. We had a lot of discussions about the fact that K-5 will not be a certified IB school, but we need to develop these learner profiles and the IB mission through K through 5 so that when children get to the 6 through 10 IB, they're prepared. I think that's a big learning curve for us right now. And then same thing with 9-10, that the mission and vision includes all the IB so that when we have the graduation years, we're included in that. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
We have another question, go ahead.
Okay, I
Go
noticed
ahead.
that the second one has 52 words.
It's a little long.
Are we still under the guidelines of 35 or less? The first one has
It doesn't have to be
52.
35, or that's not required any longer.
But that one is a little wordy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I agree. It was a lot worse when IB came back to us. This is the really kind of they needed it to say, because they're IB, they needed the global mindedness there. We did not want to give up a lot of the wording in our original mission and vision. Because we feel like that's what our original charter was on, and that's why people came to our school. So it was kind of a back and forth negotiation that took almost 3 weeks to come to the wording that we came to.
I was just concerned about it being in the application that it has to be 35 words or less for all applicants.
I don't think we've helped people to that, though.
I can't agree with you.
I should have known.
They actually wanted us to lay out all of the IB profiles, so all 10 of them in the mission statement, and we got them to at some point they had to understand, you're working with us, we're the first charter school in North Carolina to do this. You have to at some point understand there's only so much we can do, and that's kind of where we got to.
Is your vision the same?
Yes.
So it does make reference to global mindedness, the understanding of the world, interconnectivity, those kinds of things. So that is in your vision.
Yep. Yes. Again, since we've always planned on being in an IB school, the MYP, it's part of the original vision. This has always been how we've been moving. I mean, it's demonstrated in our building. That's part of the IB certification, is the living your mission and vision. And again, I think it's important, those 10 learner profiles are communicator, inquirer, thinker, principled, knowledged, open-minded, risk-taker, caring, balanced, reflective. Those are all, wonderful things to incorporate into a school.
Any other questions for Union Day? Somebody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Union Day schools change in their mission statement.
I'll second your motion.
been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, Ashley.
Stephen Gay,
Yes, aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Thinking. I don't think that was one of the options.
I think I've lost the battle. I approve.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez,
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
Union Day, we will take this to State Board in July and August, and I'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay, next we have Dogwood Classical Academy, who is requesting a relocation amendment to a different county. I do have Miss Shetler and Dr. Prasnikar. Did I say that right? Here with us today in case there's any questions on this. So, Dogwood Classical Academy is a charter school scheduled to open in fall 2024, serving K-8. They have been granted 2 delays. The first delay was the result of facility challenges mostly related to cost in Cabarrus County. Their scheduled opening was changed to fall 2023. The second delay was approved in our office pursuant to GS 115C-218.5 and amended in HB 911 of 2021. This allowed the tolling of a charter term due to delays in land use or development approvals, and their scheduled opening was then changed to fall of 2024. At that time, DCA had provided evidence of circumstances falling within this legislation due to a sewer moratorium in Cabarrus County. They have searched for a suitable solution for a temporary or permanent facility in Cabarrus County. They have looked at 100 churches as a temporary location, and each location continues to present the sewer allocation issue in Cabarrus County. So they met with Cabarrus County, and it was revealed to them that the school would not receive sewer allocation until 2027. So as a result, the board voted in February to move from Cabarrus to Iredell County after countless visits there to visit prospective temporary and permanent locations. It was determined that that would be the best option for them to be able to open in fall of 2024 as they wish to do. Your packet that you were given contains countless documents that shows prospective and temporary, that shows municipality planning reviews, a plan for purchasing a building, letters of support, and then a revised budget. They do believe that based on the data collected, that Iredell County will still reflect the demographics that Dogwood would want to represent in their school. And they were approved for the weighted lottery and are part of the NC Access grant. The budget has been adjusted, and you have that information as well, to account for 3 LEAs, just switching the higher percentage to Iredell, Statesville schools, but they do still expect to serve Cabarrus and Morrisville city schools. There is no change to their projected enrollment targets from the application. There's no change in their staff budget from their application, and they're looking to serve approximately 850 students at capacity. The first identified property in Iredell County is the former home of Mount Morn School, and that is 4.48 miles from the Cabarrus County border. So they do believe that a majority of the 601 students on their interest list would still be able to attend their school. That is already zoned for school use and for the ECO. They did identify a second property just in case the first one falls through. That's the former Ebenezer School in Statesville, North Carolina. They did submit a letter of intent to purchase if the first property falls through. This one is 23 miles from the Cabarrus County border. They are working with several organizations, BOMA USA, RPM Capital Management, which has provided a letter about financing. They're working with Miss Madeline Hannigan, who's an executive director of Great Schools North Carolina, for resources and funding. Their marketing company has agreed to pause marketing efforts until they know the relocation is approved so that they can target their marketing to the new location. They have pop-up events everywhere. They have a couple of new board members that are establishing a fundraising plan and marketing approach. And their head of school, last I was told, they have 3 viable candidates and hope to offer in June.
Where was the original thought that the school would be at in Cabarrus? Because I know you're quoting like the preferred option is 4 miles from the border, but if you live in Harrisonburg or Midland, that's not 4 miles. That's a lot of miles. So where was the original thought that the school in Cabarrus would be?
We were originally targeting that corner that kind of does back up to Iredale. And we had a location on Shiloh Church and Odell School that those were properties, land, not buildings, that we were looking at originally. And both of those roads come out onto Mooresville Route 3 and go feed right into Mooresville. It also connected to Huntersville and also hit that Davidson group. So that's where we were originally targeting. But then once COVID hit, we had to change up our plans. And the original building that we had financing set up. We had a purchase sales agreement on that, and we were getting ready to close it. And it was condemned by the county.
The short answer is this doesn't dramatically change.
No, we were already,
where you were planning to recruit, because
right. But we
it's
do
80 miles from one end of
yes,
Cabarrus. to the other
Cabarrus
side
is
of
really big.
Iredale.
Yes, this way it's big. But we do have quite a few families that are in Harrisburg and in those other communities. But a lot of them have already let us know that they're continuing to support us and that they would make that drive to support the school.
Have you guys had to make any changes in your transportation plan?
No, we will still offer transportation to students, so that might look a little different because more families might want it if they're the further out families that
So
choose.
you don't know that right. You don't know that right now that you need to make any adjustments.
Right, because we haven't really asked the families who would want to. We feel like that's going to look very different now if we're in that line of Mooresville, that end of Mooresville. So we could be looking at people wanting busing further out that didn't originally indicate that they would want busing when we made the original plan. But we've got busing provided in our regular budget and our NC Access budget funds for that.
Get an impact statement from the new district?
We were planning, if it gets approved by CSAB, we were gonna put that, send out a letter to Iredale letting them know that a relocation has been approved for their county and just getting some type of, see if they wanna issue something before we take it to state board. Cause we'll have 2 months from here.
And some of our letters that we received were from county officials, the mayor of Mooresville.
I just wanna make sure procedurally we don't
skip something.
because like we know at the state board level, most recently, we've been getting lots of questions about how we have we done due diligence and taken in consideration the LA impact statements. So if Iredale were to write an impact statement, I'd want to make sure that we've had a chance to respond to it before this would ever go to the state board. Otherwise, we could be inadvertently putting them in a difficult spot.
Yeah, the timing worked out a little bit difficult because of this being the last meeting before the summer, but we could, if we get one that we felt like needed to be responded to, we could, by the CSAB, we could certainly hold a special call meeting. We also, I didn't know, I felt like they kind of needed, like we're trying to, because we have 2 more months to get it to state board, we kind of didn't have the time to get something first from Iredale.
I think that's a good strategy. If there's something that, assuming that we approve this.
Yeah.
If there is something in that impact statement that gives us pause.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to convene a meeting and discuss it.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. There's nothing requiring the impact statements, of course, but we could certainly, as a courtesy, let the county know and see if they have one that they'd like to submit to CSAB and the state board.
So I have a question for Mrs. Shepherd, kind of related to that. I know you're looking at 2 different locations currently, but can you say how they each relate to the current Iredell charter?
The one that we want to have in Iredell, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
The one that's further away, we feel we're going to have to start from scratch because that's 23 miles away from the Cabarrus line. So our targeting for students is going to have to change, and we're going to have to make a hard press to get into that area. It's really near that Statesville area, and get our information out in that area.
So there currently is an Iredell Charter Academy?
Yes, there is an Iredell Charter Academy.
Are you anywhere near that vicinity?
No, that one's off of 77, I believe, at exit 42. Yeah.
What about if you go up near Statesville? There's a charter up there too.
There's one charter up there. We're on the opposite side of the highway. Ebenezer would be on the opposite side of that, and I believe that's a STEM school, which it's 2 very different choices from what our school is. I don't think we'd be competing for students.
Yeah, the Statesville location could be, going back to my original question, and when you're talking about, you were primarily marketing to families in sort of the northwest quadrant of Cabarrus.
Yes.
And the first option being 4 or 5 miles away shouldn't pose a lot of hardship, particularly when you're providing transportation. But when you start talking about Statesville, that's 20-some miles away. That's a different ballgame for families who live in Kannapolis,
And we agree
Harrisburg.
with that. We really, that is gonna be a last, what we found out in Cabarrus is we need to have as many possibilities out there as possible. And in the meantime, since we put this together, we found a church that's just down the road from the Mount Morn location that's up for sale as well. Property-wise, it doesn't have as much. We're planning on going out and looking at that next week. It doesn't have the property that we would need, but we're trying to reach out to the church elders and talk to them about the possibility. Would they like to lease that piece of property for a couple of years and get definite income coming in from that, and then go to sell it after we leased it for 2 years? Because Bauma USA, at the same time we're working on purchasing Mount Morn, is also looking for property locations, as well as the board members are constantly looking for property locations in case we have to make that temporary switch to a temporary building while we build. Because with building times right now, if it had to switch to a building a brand new building, we would be outside the time frames for the 2024 start. So we'll be looking at that church location, and that's right within that 4-mile, 5-mile zone as well, that's outside of Cabarrus.
And that church already has had an ECO?
We have not investigated whether it already had an ECO. The Mount Morn definitely does. And we do have on the line, just in case you had questions about the Mount Morn property, the owners of that have done a previous charter school as well. It's the Langtree Group, that they have built previous charter schools as well also, and been involved in that charter school world. And the reason they purchased that school was to keep it for a charter school. They wanted to make sure that it stayed a school as opposed to getting knocked down.
And this would be a temporary facility for you, or would that be a permanent?
The
facility?
Mount Morn would be a permanent, and that's a 12-acre piece of land. It would serve the population for the next 3 years that we would have for our school, and then we would have the ability to add on 9th through 12th if we wanted to and build. There would be enough space to build.
And so which one is that? Is that the one close to Cabarrus, or the
Yes.
one far away from Cabarrus?
That's the one really close to Cabarrus.
So I do see that Mount Morn is somewhat close to the Pine Lake prep.
Yes.
Are they the same grade levels that you're?
They're
Um,
K-12.
Right now, they're K-12. We're K-6, opening K-6 right now.
How far would you say Mount Warren is from that facility?
I think that's like a mile and a half
Oh,
difference.
very close.
They're at a 4,000, I believe the last time we checked, they're at a 4,000 waiting list, student waiting list. So we didn't feel like we would be taking anything away from them if we did locate there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty fast growing.
And a huge school. I think it might be the largest charter in the state.
This may
Next to.
be a dumb question.
Oh, yeah, you all opened after that.
Should I ask it then?
No,
first?
I guess my only hesitation is I think when you're talking about Statesville, to me, that's like
That's a different
ballgame.
application.
That's a different application. I mean, I don't know, that'd be like me submitting my application years ago as I did for Holly Springs, and but coming back and saying, but I really want to open it up in Durham.
Yeah.
Can we make a motion but put kind of some type of
Yeah.
geographic boundary that it can't be more than 10, say, I'm making this up, 10 miles from the Camaris line,
Or where the original location was.
Yeah.
well, they didn't really have
One, yeah.
one that was locked down, but
I have that same
Kinda.
concern. I'm okay with the location, the one you think that is most likely.
Yeah.
Because that's not ridiculously far.
Yes.
But when you start saying we want to open in Statesville, well, that's not even the same school. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
not.
and we only put that on as a part of the application for you guys,
To
or
back up
the
to the
amendment. Yeah, to let you guys know that there is another building, but in the meantime, we found one even closer. So our priority would be back to that church and trying to make a partnership work with that church in some way. Because we know it couldn't be our permanent building, but how can we help you guys to earn money on it? We would refocus our efforts as our second choice on that church at this point. That property just came up in the last week to 2 weeks for us. So really Statesville was an outside choice, and we figured that the distance that you guys might feel that's prohibitive to our original charter application. And we've been in constant talks with the people at Mount Warren. They're really, really on board with getting this sale to happen. So I just feel like we've got their full support. They're gonna allow us to use the building to do parent events because it was last used in 2020. It's a school that was recently used and is not in dire need of refurb. Yeah.
Well, I can just tell you that it's obvious, looking at the supplemental materials you turned, you guys have done a lot of homework, and you know this verbatim, you're able to answer questions like that, so it's obvious you've done the work. I do feel though that, budget-wise, thinking about the change in transportation and not knowing yet who's gonna need if this gets approved, I'd say get on that one quick to find out what kind of impact you're facing with either you needing more buses or it's gonna more pickups, who's gonna drive, all kind of thing. But like Bruce, I almost wonder if it's gonna help, especially making this go, when it goes to the state board, is to focus in on that one site and you guys have in the back of your mind that
Yeah.
Statesville might be another option, but that might be a new application.
Yes. Yep.
And let's just focus on the site that's
Yes.
the primary target.
And we could redo this and take that information out and send it back to you, Ashley, so that the information the state board would get. We'll add the church information that we're now targeting on, because like I said, that's literally, I think, a mile down the road from Mount Warren. It's in the very same location.
Ashley and Cheryl, this is Steve Gay. I just had a few things to add. I'm an Iredell County resident, so I agree with all the discussion about the Ebenezer School. That's been empty for years, and personally, when I was at American Renaissance 10 years ago, we actually looked at that property when it was empty 10 years ago. There's no way that school would be ready to open in August, even if you got it today. And so I'm glad you're taking it off. Also, some other information. There are 2 charter schools in Statesville. You have Success Institute and American Renaissance, who've both been there for over 20 years. And also Ebenezer is not a great location. It's basically not the Statesville metropolis. It's outside of town. It is located just off of I-77, but with all the construction there, Bruce has brought up a really good point. It's a long way from Cabarrus County. All right. I do have some questions about the Mount Morn facility, because where it is located, it is a mile and a half from Pine Lake. It's all on the same road. I mean, it's open. It's great. The question is, can it be ready by August? Because from people I've spoken with who've actually looked at the facility, they, Iredell Statesville, all your information is about Iredell Statesville building all these schools. Number 1 is, why did they abandon it? Number 2 is, the people who've looked at it recently say it's got great, how they considered it, it's got great bones, but it needs you need to make sure that an environmental has been done recently. Also, they are saying it probably needs new electrical, new plumbing, basically an overhaul for your facility. So the people that I've talked to have looked at it recently just say they walked away from it because they thought it as a huge cost. I know that Mr. Howard's on there, and they're a great group. I know they've done some good things there. I mean, it's a great location, and it is close to, people are more likely to drive there from Cabarrus County than they would be to drive to Statesville, to be honest with you. I drive the opposite way. That's just my point, but I think unless it's in better shape than the people who are telling me, it wouldn't be ready unless Mr. Howard knows they're ready to move in August.
Clarification, though, I believe this is to open in August of 2024, correct?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's-
and we
okay.
did have scope done on it, which I can add to this, that just came in the last week as well. We had, our financial person come out, and they sent a gentleman to do a scope on it, on everything that had to be done, and the cost breakdown of everything that had to be done. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Howard as well has done that. They have a list of items that they know have to be worked on that building.
Yeah, I just hope you have your eyes wide open going in there. Ebenezer School, I think you could start today and you still wouldn't be ready a year from now.
Yeah, well, in 2024, we did have a mobile plan if it was going to be Ebenezer. But like I said, that was never on the front of the plate. It was always to the back because we just knew that was asking a lot to move that far away.
So Highway 150 kind of cuts east-west across Mooresville.
Yep.
I don't know how many miles that is from the Cabarrus County line. It's more than 10. Certainly half the distance to Statesville. Is it safe to say that you're not looking at any properties? You really don't have a desire to be anywhere north of that, like north of Mooresville?
No. And that wasn't our original target. When we were looking to see if we looked in the surrounding Rowan, like counties that were very close to Cabarrus at other possible options, as our second, third, fourth choices just kept getting shot down by planning. And there is a back way. 150 isn't the route that we took to get that 4 miles. It was going back behind, and it shoots you out. Yeah. Yep.
We're approving this
As
request
on that side of it.
contingent on the permanent facility is not north of a certain.
Yep. And even the properties that we were looking at, that if we have to go to the church as a temporary facility, we're all within that quadrant that you guys are talking about, staying on that side of 150, and being just on the other side of the Cabarrus-Iredell line, running down Route 3.
I'll just say you've shown a lot of grit through this location challenge and this process, and been very resourceful. I just commend you for that.
Well, thank
It's
you.
been a long challenge.
We just appreciate, I'm telling you, you guys have a great group here supporting these schools, so we really appreciate everything Ashley and and everybody has done, starting with when Claire and the other crew was here. So we just appreciate, it's been great and very supportive, very helpful. They're always there to answer your questions.
Well, I have to say that to have them say to you, well, in 2028, we'll be able to give you water.
Yes.
Like,
Yes. And they said if you're lucky, you'll get it in 2024, but that took every quarter. They have meetings for what they reallocate, and that's if a building schedule falls off its schedule, and then they enter that back into the reallocation. But they told us that charter schools and private schools are at the bottom of that list to reallocate to, but public schools, of course, get immediate. I'm like, we are a public school.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve this request to change the home LEA to Iredell on the condition that the permanent facility not be located north of North Carolina Highway 150.
And I'm sure, I think that is the highway that runs right in front, parallel to the one in front of it. So it would keep us on that side of 77.
150, is that what it's, highway?
150.
Okay.
Yep.
That keeps you from it's going to keep you from Mooresville being the absolute northern part of where you could go.
Yeah, which is, that really, we don't want to move outside of that quadrant.
Now, Bruce, being an Iredell County resident, if you say 150, you're cutting out over half of Mooresville as an opportunity for them. I would just say, I wouldn't limit north of 150. I would say north of Mooresville proper. And with the idea, what they're saying is they're really saying that they want to be east of 77. Because if you cut out 150, if you go north of 150, the property is cheaper. If you go south of 150, because that's basically 2/3 of the tax base in Iredell County is south of 150, your prices are going to be more expensive. So if you just say south of 150, you're cutting out 2/3 of Mooresville as an opportunity for them.
I mean, I'll amend my motion. I'm not comfortable with saying east of I-77 because that could still give them Statesville.
I would just say Mooresville proper.
You just, if you say Mooresville proper, then that, would
I'd
that
like
do it?
to edit my motion, then I'd like to approve the request to move to Iredell on the condition that the school's permanent facility is not situated anywhere north of Mooresville proper.
And I'll second that.
And I'm glad we have Stephen who knows the geography.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I am.
And also, it may not be proper to say this right now, good luck convincing Mr. James and the Iredell Statesville School Board to approve, to give you a thumbs up. They're not very happy with charter schools, to be honest with you. I would probably talk with Andrew at Pine Lake to give you a best way to approach that.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Ashley.
All right, Stephen Gay,
Aye.
Bruce Friend,
Aye.
Rita Hare,
Aye.
Hilda Parlay,
Approve.
Cheryl Turner,
Aye.
Todd Godby,
Aye.
Eric Sanchez,
Aye.
John Eldridge.
Aye.
All right, we will keep you posted on the impact statement and moving it to state board.
Yep, and I'll rearrange that so that the right information is in there and take Ebenezer out of that for you. I'll
Sounds
get that
good.
sent to you. And who's on, is it Stephen?
Yes,
Yes.
Stephen Gay.
Does Andrew have a last name?
At Pine-
Morseri? Is his last name Morseri?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's the director of.
Pine Lake, at Pine Lake.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right,
Long day. We got to the meeting.
getting there, guys.
Yes. All right. Oh, Lord. Okay, this is not our easiest conversation.
All right.
Good almost afternoon. Jenna Cook with the Office of Charter Schools, and back again this month to talk about some revisions to the renewal guidelines. Provided for each of you is a copy of the 2-page copy would be the revised copy with all the revisions that are highlighted. We took out the track changes because it was getting crazy to look at. So anything changed is highlighted other than some like minor language. And then you also have the 1-page document is the original guidelines that you all used this past renewals season. And so a couple of things just to bring up to your memory from last time. You all asked that we add links and references to statute, to the 10-year and the non-renewal. So those have been added in there, and that's also linked to the statute if you have the PDF that will take you directly to those statutes. And then there was mention of adding in the consideration of subgroups and grade levels into the actual guidelines as opposed to an additional factor separately. So that has been added to the 4th bullet for 7, 5, and 3, and you'll see it added as an extra sentence. So it just says that CSAB may also consider the comparability of student subgroups or grade levels to the LEA. So we tried to add that in there to add that as another consideration for you all. And then on the 2nd page, originally on the original guidelines, you see that paragraph up there. I think that mostly got skimmed over. I'm not sure many people read that paragraph, so I just added those in bullet form on the 2nd page. So you'll see additional factors that may affect renewal recommendation. Originally in that paragraph was the persistent patterns of issues or unresponsiveness, feedback from site visits, and then we also added the bullets of declining ADM, and then patterns of high student or staff attrition, so that you all can take that into consideration, so if you choose. So those were the changes made from last time. If there is any discussion or questions.
And the timeline, we kind of talked internally, and what we thought would make the most sense is we wanted to kind of take some time over the summer to just have more time to review these, give the board more time to review these. We also plan on doing some research into renewal guidelines and standards that are in other authorizers use. And then we will bring this back to the board in September for like a final discussion and voting, so we can get it to state board as like a policy recommendation prior to next year's renewal. We didn't want to rush it, and this would give us some more time to kind of, do the work internally as well. But I think you can see from this, it's a lot cleaner and also more thorough, and then kind of took into account what we discussed at last meeting.
So we wouldn't vote on these changes till September?
Correct. Yep, that would give us more time to kind of think about it, so you guys can take this with you, see the changes. Our office is hoping to do some research this summer on different types of renewal standards and see if there's any other recommendations we would bring to you in September.
I was going to say, I also added I believe there was a ask to add the word met to the 7-year for growth. So both 7 and 5 years say met or exceeded growth. And then Dr. Danielson had asked, like, how would that have changed things? I wasn't able to find 2 years back, but this past renewals cohort, if we would have had it say met or exceeded, or if the 5-year was only it met or exceeded growth for 1 out of 3 years, it would have changed the renewal status for 4 schools from a 3-year to a 5-year, because they were able to meet growth 1 time.
Are these continually low performing schools?
No, so I looked at all of the schools, and I have the data. It's just in the world's smallest font, so I didn't pass it out. But if you want it, or I can share it with you separately. So no, any of the schools that would have been considered continuously low performing, I did not include them. So those are the schools that met growth 1 year and were only labeled as low performing, not labeled as continuously low performing. So they would have met it, according to these guidelines, they would have met that. And then it would have changed for 5 schools, but one of those schools was on financial noncompliance disciplinary status, so I left them at that 3-year.
Whenever you guys get around to looking at this, I would want to make sure, I would think that that continually low performing can't get 5 years.
Yes, we have. So yeah, continuously low performing is listed as not able to get a 5-year. So low performing, I guess technically could get a 5-year, but not continually low performing.
3 years, you have to 3 years, you have to be low performing 3 years to be continually.
I think this is, I think this is well done.
Yeah, I
Thank you
think
for
so,
the
too.
time. I guess my only comment, and then I'll chew this over my own mind, is when I look at those additional factors, I think at least like 3 of the 4 are almost like through the lens of why you might lower a renewal, like go from 7 to 5 or 5 to 3. I'd say additional factors though might also be things that, like, yes, declining ADM might be a reason to go for 3 instead of 5, but if you had additional factors of like high demand and wait list, that might
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were really only considering why you would
feedback from
lower.
Site visits could be.
Yeah,
not-
positive site
not
visits could be
bad,
helpful, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So
good
just
idea.
different lens of
Yeah,
looking,
doesn't look like we're just looking to close you.
you know.
Good. Any other considerations?
Thanks, Jenna, that was really well done.
Yep. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our last group for today. So today we have representation from ZECA to present to you all their school improvement plan that was required as part of their stipulations for their renewal. I believe we have their school leadership here today, as well as their board chair is joining us virtually, Ms. Neely. So they have they submitted on time their school improvement plan as well as a plan for their professional development requirements that were required in those stipulations, and they are here to present that plan to you and then answer any of your questions.
Yeah, Ashley, could we take 5 before they start?
Yeah.
Because people are saying they need to go out.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break real quick.
tomorrow and the next day you're in town for it.
I know.
Each last year, we were the same group.
Well, most of it I don't need to know, but, yeah, I think just, yeah. So the only other thing I wanna add is, that they have any, they're outdated and you'll know. And if they have any wait list data. Like,
They, almost like investigate. History.
The only other thing is, not in the
So each of them.
July 6th, same one, and that would be the enrollment charts printed out, so we have the recruiting reports printed out. And then
Read those.
those were written also, but just the final list after the semester. So I can have the final, like, everything detailed.
Because they announced the
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you'll just, as long as I have it like updated, like, you know, they have more instruction or whatever. Just a general update.
Yeah, and there's another report.
And so this year it's got.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna, it's all this and executive summary would be really nice. Yeah, executive summary, remember the other book one is? It's on the ODRI under state board.
Yeah, I've got that.
Okay, we just need to update, you know, we just say on June 6th, whatever it is. Yeah, final presentations, this was all work essentially. And then,
So like add.
yeah, I would do the, like, just copy that chart, and then just say under it, like, final recommendations for data.
Okay.
Copy the chart, and just, it's a preliminary, say final, and then. Yeah, and then we'll just update this to say.
In fact, this ministry is based out of Australia. So lots of British accents, Australian accents. We had some people from Hong Kong and South Africa, New Zealand and Australia, all this went to Egypt. So we don't know who to sign that check.
We've got the shirts from the hospital. Can I get you to give me a ride to the hotel when we?
Yeah, you got it. Which one?
It's the residence inn.
Okay, the one you usually see.
Yeah. We're in remediation, so most of our kids went home last Friday, and we're in remediation, and the staff is acting like holidays. The K-2 teachers are like, we don't have any kids, why we have to work? You don't have to work, but I'm gonna stop paying you. I'm not gonna pay you to call and say, like, are you kidding me?
I was just having a conversation with someone. The adults know what kids do. I swear to God, we have
It's
lost
just
our
amazing.
We have lost
I'm just amazed. I'm just like, this is all about me. Everything's all about me.
I mean, I had 12 people who signed a contract because their pay is a little below the state. And you told myself, guys, there is nothing in your contract that says that we're going to do this. We're going to do this last weekend. You know, and they're like, besides the fact, if you looked at your test scores, until your test scores don't come talk to me and ask about more pay.
They don't get paid for hours. Teacher I didn't get my grades done on Friday that were due on Thursday, okay?
You also
I
took
didn't get my
10
grades
days
done
out
on
this.
Friday. I'm gonna have to work them on the weekend. Are you gonna pay me overtime? First of all, I'm gonna pay you by the hour. Second of all, this was in the job. Like,
That's right.
am I gonna pay? Well, then I'm not doing them over the weekend, because I don't, if I'm not gonna pay, I'm not doing them over the weekend. She won't be doing them at Sugar Creek anymore.
Let's roll.
That's the end.
Well, and then the problem is that they all have this feeling that they're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't do it, who's you gonna get?
Right, exactly. And
I'd rather get somebody else than you. That's
well,
why.
the other thing too is that they drank the Kool-Aid. They heard in the news you can't find teachers. That's not true.
And spots. Hard schools.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Morning or afternoon.
I think we're in afternoons. So, basically on May 2nd, we had the CSI team come in and they did a comprehensive needs assessment for the school. And they gave us an overview of some of the feedback from their visit that occurred on May 2nd. I'll just share that feedback with you real quickly because that feedback is what we use to create this school improvement plan. So they said to improve the quality of our teaching and learning, they wanted us to explicitly define instructional expectations and non-negotiables and narrow professional development to ensure it's streamlined and specifically supports the expectations and non-negotiables. They also said they wanted us to ensure that an instructional delivery was fully aligned to the depths of the standards, including various teaching and learning styles, and develop students' critical thinking skills. And they wanted us to leverage the available technology to ensure that the school is fulfilling its commitments to the students as a school of arts and technology. They wanted us to also increase instructional monitoring and narrow the focus of it to reflect the established teaching and learning priorities while providing descriptive and actionable feedback, and to restructure the current school day to ensure all instructional time is fully utilized for higher level instruction that fully engages students in standard-based learning. And so we aligned our goal 1, 2, and 3 to those recommendations. And then our goal 4, we added one for leadership because we also wanted to start building our building level leadership to include the teachers taking on more responsibility in some leadership expectations. And so that's how we came up with our goals. And then we went back with our partners and had a conversation with how can we align those expectations to our school improvement plan. So when you look at our strategies that's listed in the school improvement plan, those come directly from NC STAR. So those are the dimensions in NC STAR. And then we met as a team and determined our action steps that we would want to follow to meet those strategies. I don't want to read it.
No, you don't have to go through the we have
Yes.
it, so that'll give us the opportunity just to ask some questions.
Okay.
I guess, so I'm looking at your goal 1. I get it that your strategies came straight out of NC STAR. But by May 2025, and those are the instructional goals, that was a little concerning to me since by May 2025, you're already back in renewal.
So they sort of, because we were trying to do the alignment for reading, math, and science, the reading portion is already done, right? And has been implemented this year. And we will this summer look at the effects that happened from our reading alignment that was completed at the beginning of this school year that's ending.
What did your data look like when you finished your EOGs?
For this?
For reading, yeah.
For this year?
Yeah.
At about 45%.
And how is that relative to where you were first time taking it in the past?
In the past, we were in reading at like 39%.
So it's still about the same.
Well, it's still about the same for this year, but it still shows of course, ours has always been about growth. So it still shows us growing in the upward trajectory of increasing. We had more students actually to score 4s and 5s than we ever had before, so you can see that. And then with our proficiency, that even increased. And you're going to see, like we saw where on our 3rd grade every one of the students made level 1s. And then at our preliminary data is showing that it was over 50%. Wasn't it 50-60% made proficiency in 3rd grade alone? So the reading part is strong.
So the changes that you made in reading seem to be working for you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We saw that in reading, and also we implemented the science curriculum at the start of this year, the Smithsonian science curriculum, and usually in our science, it's a -5 proficiency, less than 5%. And we had this year our 8th graders, between 8th and 5th grade, it was another 60% proficiency with science. So that curriculum is really working. But you'll see we still mentioned it here because This was the first year the teachers had to do the study on the national science standards, and so we really want to do some work with them to make sure they're understanding that alignment to the essential standards and so forth, although we saw the growth, and it's working. Math, we saw preliminary growth as well, not as large, so we know that math is that area that we really have to put the focus on. So when we use the 2025 date, it's because we got to start math this year, and that process, it takes a little bit of time. So that's
the goal covers the whole thing. And,
yes, ma'am.
And the strategies and action steps cover as you go through.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am. By 2025, like everything would be aligned in it. Okay. You want to add to that?
I would just say, as well as the milestone dates show kind of what is the focus in each school year during that summer.
Please come to the mic so other people can hear you.
I was supporting that the milestone dates also help to see how it's been scaffolded through the school year, what we're doing during the summer for each school year until the end of 2025.
Can you introduce who you have here today?
This is Brianna Green, and she's our curriculum coach.
And I'm Dr. Irvin, I'm the vice chair.
Okay. Any other board members with you?
All of our board members are here except for Miss Neely, our vice chair, our chair. She has strep throat, so she's online. Yes.
When's the last time your board met as in a formal meeting?
We meet every third Monday, so we met in May.
It's not reflected in the minutes.
The minutes
of
aren't
your
posted.
website. The website
Well, the
shows
May
it.
ones might not be posted yet because you haven't had a chance to
Right.
approve them. But
Right.
the April ones aren't there either.
Right. We did not meet in April. So the minutes are up to date. Now, we learned our lesson with that. So that's up to date. What you see online is up to date. But we did not have an April meeting, and we met in May, and she's not going to post them until after they meet in June. Yes.
At the May meeting, did your board approve this plan that you submitted to us?
Yes.
You go by Mrs. Howard, Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes, either one.
Okay, Ms. Howard then. You had a school improvement plan in 2019. Can you tell me how this one differs? What do you think changed?
Well, what we had to do is we had to go in and sort of streamline this one a little bit more. I think in 2019, we had like a lot of stuff we were trying to accomplish, and that was limited to our understanding at the time of even how to use NC Stars. So we were doing too much. And so now this one, we're trying to narrow our focus to meet like what is the current needs that we're seeing in school, and taking the feedback from the outside sources that's coming in as that third eye and saying, hey, okay, you're doing a good job over here, but let's look at this. So we streamlined this one a little more.
Something that I noticed I'd like to ask you about is that your previous plan addressed some mental health, the teachers, morale.
Yes.
Things like massages and
yes.
I can't think of all of it, but you had strategies to help support teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because you felt that was needed, evidently, and classroom etiquette and things that were not as academic. Like this seems to be strictly about the academics. I guess my question is, do you feel like your staff and your teachers are ready for this? Because there was a time that they needed more support, they needed some help to cope with the challenges of the students.
Yes. So you're absolutely correct. In that time, we had to put more emphasis there with that social and emotional mental well-being for students and teachers, because that was like the catalyst for teachers quitting, like just up and quitting because of whatever, like in the middle of the year, not giving you notice. Just it was a lot of that. So we had to go in, put a lot of support structures in place so that we could get the behaviors and the challenging parts under control, and we've done that. I mean, that's what we are sort of known for. So that work hasn't gone away. It's still there, but we're able to now shift our attention to, now that we're more stable and the staff is more stable, like we've done our intent to return. All the staff that's here this year is returning next year. So we're still doing work in that. It's just we can now move our focus a little bit more. We had gradually started moving our focus to the academic even before this. It's just it was a slow progression to getting there because we had to stabilize some other things.
Right, so you feel like they're up to this. This is a challenging school improvement plan.
Yes.
It was very challenging for them. I had a little concern about the the hiring, I don't know if I can pull that up in front of me, but you have some aggressive hiring plans for this coming school year. And
Okay.
I'm sure it's budgeted, if you have it. Goal number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So that may not be where I read it.
I'm thinking you probably read it in goal number 4, probably.
I believe it was maybe 7 this year,
Right.
plus an instructional coach.
Right.
Just how's that going to be budgeted? Do you have extra funds coming in?
So what we did, our partner helped us to write our the IPG grant, and we are the only school in the Southwest region that was able to even put in the grant application for IPG. That's not saying we're going to get it, but we put our good foot, forward in terms of what we wanted to add to the program. So a lot of the funding for those positions, like the mentor coaches, we were wanting to bring in mentor coaches from the University of Charlotte. They'll be retired professors who will come in and do monthly mentoring with all teachers. All teachers will be assigned a mentor. It doesn't matter if you're a beginning teacher or not. And because our teachers, even our experienced teachers, continue to express the need for a better understanding for pedagogy, like how to teach math and this, that, and third. So we figured we would bring these mentors in from the university level that can give us a little bit of what would have been given in a teacher training program at the collegiate level. So as long as the IPG grant is approved, we'll be able to do those things. Since it was already put out and we don't know the outcome of those, if we're going to be awarded those grants, those grant funds, we thought it would still be notable to put it in the plan because it's part of our plan.
It is goal 4 strategy 2, and it's this summer in the school year, select teachers, subject matter leaders, hire 7 additional staff members to create 2-person teams at each level, then hire 1 reading specialist, 1 math and science, hire master coaches from collegiate level. So a lot of hiring, if the grant doesn't happen,
then we will have to revisit. We will have to go back and I'm sorry.
When do you hear about the grant? You have a deadline.
I want to say that we are supposed to hear this summer about the results because it's already been submitted. So we should know something this summer. And we also received notification that we was qualified for some additional CSI funding through NCRAW, which is the Resource Allocation Review. So we have those anticipated funds that are coming in, and whatever funds that come in, we're just going to make sure they align to the plan that we submitted. And then we are also carrying over in PRC 103 and 105, we are carrying over a total of $30,394 for that was set aside for professional development $30,394 that hasn't been spent, and that was aligned from PRC 103 and 105 for professional development. So yes, we have looked at what our funds was looking like for professional development to handle the things that we put in this plan.
Did you create a hiring budget for this next year's hiring? Do you have
our 2023-24 budget is in works right now. We haven't finalized it and so forth yet, but yes, that's going to be put in that budget.
Thank you for asking that. That's where I'm struggling today. I'm really transparent. So much of what's in this plan, there's a real financial impact to your budget, from 7 additional staff members to paying for university coaches to the professional development. These are all good things. I'm not passing judgment on whether those are not going to lead to better student outcomes. We hope they will. I don't know if you currently use iReady or Alexia. If you don't, there's additional expenses.
We already use iReady and Alexia. We're adding the letters part. And we have that written into the IPG as well, so that they will take care of paying for that. And we have been looking for additional funding sources so that we can make sure that we can cover those things. And as far as the second person in the classroom, the 7 that you saw, we're a 1 class per grade. And with our student, the data shows with the scatter plot of the instructional needs in terms of, you may have one student who starts out on grade level and they're so sort of scattered. The teachers have suggested that if they had a TA in the room, so that when they're doing small group instruction, if we have some instructional support, it can help with those differentiated groups.
So there's a lot in here that just costs money, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And this plan is contingent upon a budget that doesn't yet exist.
A portion of it,
Okay.
yes. Goal 4
But,
is, yes.
But it's not just human resources. It's school net training. It's cultural responsible training. It's buying math and science curriculum or
And all of that is built into our federal funds that we are receiving. That's there.
My point is this. There's a lot in here that's contingent upon your 2023-24 budget supporting your ability to execute with fidelity this plan. But that budget's not done yet.
Mm-hmm.
When I go back to what the state board, the reason we're here today is because the state board has put the condition of your renewal. They put a lot of conditions on that. One of those conditions is that if we don't find that this plan is likely to result in improved academic outcomes, we will make recommendations for changes that must be included in the plan. And failure to have a CSAB approved plan by June 30th will result in the termination of your charter on June 30th. I don't know how I approve this, say this is a good plan when I don't see the financial backing to support it.
So,
It's not saying that there's not great ideas in this plan, but if I'm going
Right.
to say this is going to lead to student academic outcomes that we haven't seen in 10 years,
right.
and to execute this plan is going to require all these extra resources, but we don't have how that's being paid for, or if the grant doesn't come through. That's where I'm struggling, because
Well, all of it is not contingent upon the grant. It's a portion of it, and then a portion of it is with the funds that we've already been told that we will be able to participate with the NCR. We brought in the CSI team, and they before you saw the plan, they had the plan, and they helped us work through and gave us feedback, and we had a team of people that sort of helped us get through this portion.
I understand.
So,
And I'm just looking for making sure that we're aligning whatever we do today with what the state board has asked us to
Right.
do. I will, if I want to, I don't want to belabor the conversation, but I look at these strategies. Instructional teams will develop standards to align units of instruction for each student and grade level. Lesson plans, vertical bridge documents, unit guides will be developed. All teachers will develop weekly lesson plans on aligned units of instruction.
So they
Why
looked
weren't
at.
these done 10 years ago? I guess is my question.
I'm not going to say that it wasn't done. I'm going to say the quality and the level in what it was done is what the CSI team was really speaking about. And so before we had the alignment of the curriculum in place, you had teachers who were writing lesson plans, but they wasn't rigorous and they wasn't necessarily aligned to the highest quality. Now, like for the reading that we just completed at the beginning of this year, it clearly says what and when in terms of what you have to teach. It gave the teachers a better understanding of the standard, whereas before they were just looking at this whole big old standard and they had a lot of components to it, and they didn't understand how to go into the different levels of the teaching and learning from that. So by this narrow scope that we have put in place with reading, that really helped with their understanding of it. So now building the lesson plans, we're saying this level is because we want teachers not to depend on other resources like what's those sites that they were depending on, like teachers for
Teacher pay
teachers,
teacher.
teacher pay teachers, and they're just grabbing something and they really don't know if it's really reaching what the standard is telling you. So that's where the idea came from, taking them through that process of teaching them how to write rigorous lesson plans and creating that database. So now the lesson plans are aligned to the unit guides that we have, which is aligned to the assessment. So it's not necessarily that it wasn't in place years ago, it was just the quality of how it was in
But
place.
who was holding them accountable for if it wasn't up to, if
I think
it
we
wasn't
were-
of the quality, I mean.
I think, but at that
we've
time,
got- We have to have the faith that
Right.
this is going to stop.
Mhm.
The student performance that we've seen for the last 10 years is not acceptable.
right. And to
I mean,
answer
I
that
don't-
question, there was.
If they weren't held accountable for it then, why should we sit here today and think next year's gonna be different?
So to
2 years
answer
is
that
gonna be
question, it
different.
wasn't that accountability wasn't in place. It was being held accountable, but at that time, there was a lot of stuff to be held accountable for. It was the behaviors, it was the things falling apart with the wellness. It was a lot of understanding how to even teach the design of the students that we had. It was a lot of components going on. So it wasn't that it wasn't accountable, it was just, it was lost in the midst of all that was going on. So these steps over these few years have been to regulate a lot of things. And so now we're just here to where we can get the higher quality in terms of the instruction. We've always had teachers turn in lesson plans. We've always reviewed lesson plans, and we've always talked about lesson plan building. But it just depended on the time with what else was going on along with that. So now a lot of stuff has been organized and mainstreamed and fixed. So, but to speak to the budget thing, other than the monies that we have and that we're carrying over, and the fact that our projected funds are already aligned to it, I don't have another answer for, other than if we don't get the IPG grant funds, then we will have to readjust our fourth,
What is your enrollment
our
projection
goal.
what are you projecting for enrollment next year?
We can only have 120 students according to our state.
That's what you're allowed to have, what are you
Right.
projecting to have?
We're projecting to have the 120, and we're striving to go a little higher than that. But we are having to work on, right now we're good with the 120. We just had to open our open enrollment back up because we have to go back and clean up some of the stuff. Once it was announced that we were closed or closing, or that you had voted no, that went like wildfire through the community. The news picked it up and everything. And so now we are dealing with the issue that we are having to go back and erase that thought and let people know that, in fact, we are not closing. And so open enrollment is open again.
What was the highest, at your highest point this past school year, what was that enrollment wise?
100.
And the news did pick up your approval too, so it made the headlines.
Mhm.
That you got the 3
Yes.
conditional.
Well, they don't have
I would
that.
also say, like on goal 3, it's just another example of purchase math manipulative kits for every grade level. So put a $sign outside of that, and let's say, what does that cost? Purchase science kits for each grade level, $sign. Purchase science literacy books, $sign. Purchase reading manipulatives, culturally relevant classroom book sets. Purchase. If you put a $sign outside of each of those, and then go down to your goal 4 and all of your hiring of some strong people, some make strong contributions to the work you're trying to do, but you need to put a $sign out beside each of that. And take a look at what you're dealing with. I don't know if your school.
And those dollar signs double their current budget. So, I mean, I think that's what Bruce is trying to get to, is that if this grant doesn't happen, and we're supposed to be able to do, and we don't find out till July whether or not the grant happens or not, and we're supposed to give them a clear bill of health June 30th.
We're supposed to approve the school improvement plan.
How do you improve the school improvement plan with the budget?
It did request.
Yeah, and I guess my concern with it is that if you don't get the grant, because so much of this now depends on this grant, that there's not a backup plan, and it's going to be time to start school, and you're going to be scrambling to try to figure out, well, what are we going to do instead? That will be an instructional plan we didn't approve and don't even know about, and and there's no way to know that that's going to work. And I guess the concern, it's not that this is a bad plan, because it's not. It's that it's an expensive plan that depends on funds that aren't guaranteed. And that you're not gonna know whether you have them until just before the doors open. And my concern then is, if you don't have a plan, you're gonna go with what you know, and you're gonna be where you were.
Well, and then the other too is that you got all these people coming on board and staff development to do, and you'll have a month to plan that before school opens up. I mean, to get.
Now, all the staff development, if you look at the milestones, like,
Yeah, but
Ms.
I'm
Green-
saying that the teachers need to know that this stuff is coming too. I mean, this is gonna really greatly impact their year.
Right, it's no teacher, the things that you see there is for teacher assistants and then for the mentors mainly. It's no new teachers that will be coming on.
No, I mean, it's like the folks that are there now are gonna need to know, not only are they gonna be doing what they have been doing, but here's all this other staff development that's coming, and there's been no chance for them to get bought into it. Like, this plan is being handed to them and saying, here's what we're gonna do. So I'm just saying that's gonna be a
Right.
difficult process. I'm not saying it
Right.
can't be done.
No.
I'm just saying it adds to the stress of what already is seeming to be a pretty stressful job for them to do.
Right. So since we are such a small school and we only have 9 teachers, they were part of the process. They've been part of this process the whole time. I mean, I think the most stressful thing was to hear to hear it changed around, and then a week later, here comes the CSI team to do. That's an intensive process to go through, and they went through that, as troopers. They were prepared for whatever they had to do to make us improve. That's the bottom line that everybody wants. So I think they've already been under a lot of intense stress, even to go through this CSI visit on May 2nd and 3rd. And that same week, when CSI team pulled out, we had an equity group that was already scheduled prior to any of this going on out of Texas, who was coming in to do some of the same types of observations and give feedback, and they were there. And on top of our ESSER audit that was fine. So stress is there, but they are.
Couple months.
Yes, and May was a very busy month. But they are very well aware of and had some input in what we wanted to do.
Ashley, what is the Office of Charter Schools able to do or prepared to do? My concern is that we're going to get to July, the grant won't come in, and now we need follow-up to make sure that they have a plan in place, that that they're able to go forward to improve. And so what is the Office of Charter Schools able to do in that area?
Well, definitely with these schools that have stipulations from the state board, we plan on having at least monthly check-ins. So what we could do is certainly have a time to touch base with the school sometime, maybe, I guess, when did you think the grant? You're not sure when the grant award
It just said the summer,
Okay.
and the CSI team is coming back because they have to do their unpacking. So they're not just, they didn't just do this review and then they're out. They're a part of this process. They got to come back, unpack it with the staff, and then they're a part of this professional development stuff too. So it's an ongoing thing. So they're coming back in.
They're not going to supply any money, so.
So we could stay in touch with the school, and then, in the, worst case scenario, they don't get this funding this grant funding that they're expecting, we could meet with the school and discuss how the plan will change based on that. We'll also be in touch with the team here that does the comprehensive needs
the CSI
assessments,
people.
and we can work with them to kind of collaborate with you. And we'll definitely keep a close eye on making sure that.
I would suggest that you start to think about what's Plan B,
Yeah.
because grant money is never, ever guaranteed. And so I really would start to think about what's Plan B, because you don't want to get to schools open. Now you got kids in front of you, and now you got to figure out Plan B, because I promise you will go to what you know, because it's too crazy.
Mm-hmm. No,
I still go back to what the state board's vote. And a condition of the state, we didn't create this. The state board's vote was failure to have a CSAT approved plan in place by June 30th. will result in termination of SECA's charter on that date.
So let me interject this, in reviewing their previous school improvement plan, and it was academic, it had academic components, I wasn't trying to say earlier that it didn't. But there was a section where, as Ms. Owens-Howard was saying, they were, in teaching student behavior and etiquette and expectations in the classroom. They were really trying to, help the children learn what's expected and how to work in a school setting, as much as they were academic, trying to help teach. Then, like everyone else, they hit a few years of COVID. And I think that to a degree, the intentionality that's here and the attention to this could move them forward. I have to believe that they currently have some type of manipulatives in the school. The school
Right.
must own science kits or I think, that they may have ways to compensate for lack of dollars. And that they may have gotten past, as she said, having teachers that feel supported and are sticking with them and committed, having students that are ready to learn and understand expectations. And I think that it could be different. I know that we've had, as you said, 10 years of unacceptable. It could be that they're ready at the precipice of something new and better. There's a lot of intentionality. I know.
But we still have to approve that plan.
We're not, we cast a vote as a group on whether we thought this school should be renewed.
Yeah.
There was only one of us who voted yes, and it was me, who said they shouldn't be closed. We're not recasting that vote, we're talking about the plan. Will this plan allow for 10 years of failing performance be turned around in the next 3 years? That's what to me, what we're voting on today. I don't disagree with everything you're saying. I visited this school. I saw happy, safe students. I saw teachers who liked being there. That's all good, but it has to manifest itself into academic performance. And
Chris,
that's where I'm struggling, because the state board has told us to not on the, we've already voted, the CSAB made a vote on what we thought the school should be in terms of a 3, 5, or non-renewed. Now we're being asked, okay, state board is giving them, we'll give you 3 years if you meet these conditions. And one of those conditions is that we have to feel good about this plan.
Well, here's this even throws another big wrench into it as far as I'm concerned is, let's say we're approving this plan today. Let's say we approve it. And that's with the caveat or asterisk that they get the grant. Well, then we find out in July they didn't get the grant. Well, then number 6 says ZECA must implement with fidelity the plan approved by CSAP. Well, the plan is no longer valid
Because they can't.
because they didn't get the grant, and so there's no, what we approved in June isn't there in July. So how do they implement with fidelity the plan that we approved?
You're articulating better than what I was. And to me,
That's what you were trying to say.
It's not just about the grant. It's about all these other expenditures. You must have read my notes, because I literally had dollar signs next to all of those things.
Well, even beyond that, if they get the grant.
Without seeing the budget, I don't know how their 2023-24 budget supports. I may think this plan is wonderful, but you can't implement it if you don't have the budget to implement it.
How much is the grant?
What's that?
How much is the?
How much was the grant for?
$323,500 over a 3-year period.
Over 3 years?
Yeah, so it'd be $970,500.
Each year.
Well, how
Yeah,
much
300,000 a year.
Yeah.
Oh, 300,000
In a year.
Well,
Yes.
7 positions times 40,000.
Some of those
That's
were
almost
staff.
300,000.
Yeah.
They do say staff, not
Who's the grant for?
instructional.
The IGA, that one where they could cooperate with another entity?
Yes.
Cooperate with another entity?
It's the Innovative Partnership
Yeah.
Cohort
Have to
3
be continually
grant.
low performing to apply for it.
If they receive the grant, they still have to identify 7, 8, 9, 10 people and get them hired.
I
That's not gonna
honestly
happen.
feel like we need, what's Plan B? I understand completely what Bruce and John are saying, that we approve this, that's the plan they have to implement, but we already know that can't happen without this grant. And so I feel like we need to know what would Plan B be? What are you gonna do if you don't have the grant? How are you still gonna accomplish the things you want to accomplish?
Right.
Even if they got the grant in mid-July, how do you mobilize that for a start of the
That's what I was
school
trying
year?
to say.
Like for the number of bodies, the purchasing of all the things, like I don't know how you would implement that
Ordering
to start.
So we have,
start a school.
as Dr. Harris said, we do have some of those supply processes have already been started. So it's not like it's gonna be from ground zero. Like we have some cultural relevant materials and some math materials already in place because the teachers started that towards the end of this year with learning from Solution Tree how to utilize math manipulatives. And so we use some of our this year federal funds to start ordering that. So at the start of the year, there's enough in place with, as long as they're continuing to learn how to use it at a higher quality to start with, and it shows a progression of how we're going to purchase and lead into those things. Our partner that we partner with is coming out of the University of Charlotte, so before we even put the grant in place, she had already identified some potential mentors and already had conversations with them about their interest level in joining into the project if the grants was funded. So a lot of that legwork has already been done. It's just waiting for the final, you have the funds so we can now implement. We're not going to be starting from ground zero in August with a lot of this
Okay,
stuff.
but if you don't get the funds, so the fact that you have the materials, that means you can teach. That's a good thing. You got
Right.
that. But a lot of this development of the staff is based on all these other people that don't exist in your current world. How are you going to accomplish those things if you aren't able to get all those people? You still have to accomplish the same thing.
Right.
And that's the point.
And that's what I need. I guess that's what I'm looking to hear from you that I'm not hearing.
You want to add something to them?
Let's see. So related to a lot of the instructional teams, the materials, the last 2 years I've worked extensively to supply all of the ELA classrooms with their class sets already. Right now I'm working just to finish first grade, which is the only reoccurring teacher, so she already had a momentum of how to support the teachers, and we're currently working on those class sets. The science kits have already been purchased. They've been in use. This is the second year, and we saw really great.
I'm just gonna ask, I guess, a pretty straightforward question. If you don't get the grant,
Thank you.
and you need $300,000+ in order to do this plan in year one, do you have it in reserves? Do you have it in a projected surplus? Do you have it somewhere where you can supplement it, hire those people, and do your plan?
Okay. Yes, so we do have funds in reserve that we.
So you have enough to do
Do
this
you
plan.
have enough to do
We
this?
have, yes, so we have, at the end of, right now in reserve, we have $289,664. We still have, I think I turned in the bank statements, we still have an outstanding of $109,262 that's outstanding of money that we have not received yet because we are participants of the K-12 COVID testing grant reimbursement, where we were able to do a lot of that teacher wellness with. It's a reimbursable grant where we've purchased things and our money hasn't been given back to us yet from the Department of Health and Human Science. So that stuff is coming in. So yeah, we do have other funds that we would be able to look at if we needed to utilize those funds. Also, we have received our federal planning dollars for next year, and because had I known that you wanted the 2023 budget completed for this moment right here, we would have done that. Normally, Charter Success, who monitors our monies and so forth, don't require us to have our drafted budget in until June 30th. And so we just wouldn't have that document until June 30th.
Ours isn't due till June 30th either. She was agreeing.
Yeah, so had I known that you wanted to see it, I would have had that ready for you at this moment. I got a call yesterday at 11:30 asking for that budget, and I was like, I don't have it ready, and I wouldn't have been able, and I didn't want to rush it and give you garbage. I wanted to make sure that it was.
Okay, so
I'm going to speak for me. In order to consider approving this plan, I would have to see through a budget that you could implement this plan without those federal dollars.
without the federal or without
Or
the grant, the
money.
IGA
Without-
grant.
Without the grant money.
Okay.
There, because otherwise it's not a plan, it's a hope.
Can I ask you guys, has this school had financial issues in the past?
I don't know.
No, the only issue that was brought up was low ADM.
ADM, yeah.
Okay, just low
But
ADM.
nothing in the financial
In 10
non-compliance.
years of being around, or whatever?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
no financial non-compliance, okay. That's good.
So we do have number 4 in our instructions. We find problems with the submitted plan, then we recommend changes. That you're talking about, either plan B or different budgetary
Yeah,
figures.
and Ms. Evans Howard, I'm the one who asked CSAP to, or asked the Office of Charter Schools for the budget, and, yeah, no one's trying to be critical that you don't have your 23-24 budget completed yet. Some schools don't, right? At the same time, that budget is part and parcel with this plan. And I don't know, I'm gonna be really candid, like it shouldn't, like I don't know how you put this plan together without knowing how you're gonna pay for it and having that reflected in the budget. So I understand you don't usually have your budgets done by this time, but,
Well, when we
seeing
put
that
it
would
together,
be
we
really
did have the where we're going to get the money has always been in the forefront of our heads as we were going through this process. I did not formally put it down in a budget, but as I worked with the teams and we talked about, what are we seeing projected? What is some possible projected funds coming this way? The NC Raw's funds, the IPG grant funds. We did sit down and budget was in the front of that because we've never had a problem with our money before and we don't want to start there. We took in consideration of our enrollment and all that good stuff. I just didn't formally connect it to this because it didn't show as part of the requirement, but I can go back if you want me to go back and put a budget together. I certainly can do that for you.
well, you have to put a budget together.
Right.
for us, for
Well,
you.
right. But I'm saying if you want to see it.
I think an important note though is
Right.
that if you do, which is great, I think you guys have already done that, just we haven't seen it formally, is that you're using all your reserves in year one that you have if you don't get this grant, right? So if anything happens at the school, a roof leak or something else like that, then you're using all the reserves that you have in order to make the educational plan work. Would that be an accurate statement?
Well, I can't. I would say no because I can't really say that because we haven't allocated our federal funds yet for our planning funds.
Okay, so your planning allotment funds are not included in what we've talked about so far?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what approximately how much was your planning allotment for federal funds?
I'm not for sure with that. I came prepared for what I had. I'm not for sure with that because they just recently came out. And when I tell you May has been crazy going through all these assessments, I really haven't. But it's not assigned.
Both Mr. Sanchez and I noticed this morning that ours have been decreased from last year.
Okay.
No, I don't know why.
I don't know why they are either, but they are.
But those funds are available for aligning as I have to write, how I'm going to use those funds. It's not included in this yet.
So direction from this point for them
Okay,
would
so
be,
I guess I think we need to go to discussion at this point and to talk about where are we with this. You can have a seat. We'll ask you back up in a minute.
thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, our charge, as Bruce has very clearly stated, is to approve a plan that we think will work. And if the current plan doesn't do that, then to make recommendations for them to fix it, which we then must approve by June 30. Is that that's my understanding
That's the way I read it.
of where we are. All right, just kind of to get a sense, how many people think we can approve the plan we currently have?
I can't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so then the next thing is, what is it we want them to do that they need to do and get back to us before June 30?
Here's my question. Here's my question. I know we kind of go all over the place with how deep to go into how much to lift up the hood and go under. There hasn't been financial issues in the school for 10 years. If the content of the plan is satisfactory to the group, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm finding it difficult then to how deep to get into their dollars with it. Like, to be honest, I don't even know what we're talking about right now because nothing's itemized. We're guessing 40,000 for 7 people, and then how much you have in surplus and how much you have in fed. Like, it's just, they may have more than enough to do this, and they may not have even close to enough.
Which would mean we need a
But
budget.
they have 10 years of track record to show that they haven't had financial issues in a world where we get financials every time.
Just
The school comes up.
sorry to interject, for the clarity of the record, we did look back on the financial, non-compliance, and they did have financial non-compliance in 15, 16.
So they were put on disciplinary in May of 15, and then they were moved to probationary in December of 16.
So 2015, 2016, just to
But they
be
haven't
clear.
had it recently.
But not recently.
Nothing recently. I guess, Eric,
And I'm not saying I'm leaning one way. I'm just saying that's my kind of like.
I got you.
yeah.
If the content's good and you say you're going to do it, then. But at the same time, I mean, the way they just spoke about the surplus, I was thinking the same thing. Like, are you saying you're going to use every single dollar of your reserves to get just year one? So it didn't give the warm and fuzzy for that.
Right.
Yeah, I guess if in fact they have a plan for how they're gonna do this, if they don't get this grant, then I just need to see it. Like, I just wanna know, how are you gonna get this done? I don't know that I feel comfortable that because you've never gone into financial problems before, that even whatever changes you would make because of the finances are going to move you towards academic success, because what you haven't had in the past is academic success. So this is a plan that could give it to you, but if you can't finance that plan and have to go to something else, I don't have confidence that your something else will be effective if I don't know what your something else is.
So I would be a lot more content if the plan that was submitted today worked inside their already working budget, not in the hopes of receiving a grant, but a grant could further supplement the plan that we've created.
Right, we can support this, that's a good solid plan, but if we get this grant, we can add
We
these
can even add
things
this
to
in.
it.
Right.
Also,
So to really
I
get
can
focused in on
I can
what
get
we,
behind something like that.
what can we afford right now with what we currently have, and then if we get this grant, then we can
Can
do
do
this
these
as
extra
well.
things. And that's the plan B I'm asking
Right,
for.
we can put
That's
some more gas in
exactly
the
the
tank
plan
and
B
get
I'm
there
asking
faster,
for.
right, whatever, yeah.
And since they've basically been so good at handling their monies, then where's the budget for this? So
Well,
keep
keep going.
that practice up.
If we gotten, and again, no offense to them, they weren't prepared for this, but if we had gotten some decent answers about just money in general, right? Our ADM next year shows we have this surplus, or this is the reserve, and we're gonna be able to supplement, like, there wasn't anything that gave, so I would lean towards that. Plus, that would probably give us an extra meeting with you, right?
We take back the flowers and all the things.
You thought you were done?
Give me the cereal.
Just take it back, yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see what it is?
But in all seriousness,
I
I
was gonna
really
show it to you
think
at
that's the
lunch.
direction that would help the situation out, is to create this plan as if you had no extra money. Looking at your reserves, looking at your federal allotments for next year, looking at your ADM and the numbers you have, pare this plan down to what you can afford. And then if you were to get the grant, what would you add in on top of this to supplement what you're already planning to do? And then I feel like that's a lot more streamlined going into the next school year than to just hope that this works, because that drastically changes what we've discussed and approved in June.
I think it would make it realistic.
Are all of the goals, because it looks like there's mainly one specific goal that's,
There's one that's asking for a lot of extra supplemental materials.
Yeah, they
too.
said they have some of those materials now. My concern is that that goal 4, where all those people are, that's the intensive push
That's
to
where
make
the drive
to
is.
make the academics happen.
Yeah.
And so if that can't happen, then what do you do instead?
yeah.
Either prove you can still afford it, or have a plan B.
Or have a plan B, yeah. And that's what I would ask for. Now, if we ask for that, that does mean a called meeting. I mean, it can be remote, but it'll be a called meeting.
Goals 3 struck me as well, because again, at the end of the day, what has to happen here? Academic achievement of students must change. That's what all of this is about. Goal 3 is by the end of May of 2025, student engagement in all classrooms will increase by 90%, resulting in an increase of student academic confidence as measured by surveys. How are you measuring student engagement? And how does student engagement that increases academic confidence result in proficiency and growth?
It doesn't result in it by itself, but working with this population of kids, building confidence is important to getting there.
That's important with any group of kids.
I haven't worked with any others. I don't know, I haven't worked with any others.
My point is, like, the goal shouldn't be about student engagement. The goal has to be about student academic outcomes.
Well, part of that is how NC Star is set up.
Okay.
And because you only have these 11 things you can choose from, and these 11 indicators that you can choose from, and then you have to write this thing that's called fully complete, and what will it look like when it's fully complete, and you can't mark the thing off until everything in it is done. And so some of it is that in order to meet the indicators in order to meet the strategies for the indicators that they picked, student engagement may be one of the things they have to address.
And they did include action steps.
Yeah.
1 through 7.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to tie that
they're
back to
reasonable action steps.
Yeah. All right, so what I think I'm hearing is that people would be willing to consider approving a plan for them before June 30 if we can get either a budget that shows that they can implement this without the grant, or what they plan to do if they don't have the grant based on the finances that they have, both their incoming finances for ADM, their resources, saved resources, and their federal allotments, which they've also not had a chance to really do anything with yet.
Would it, I mean, just for clarification for me, would it not be more reasonable to ask, maybe not more reasonable, wouldn't it be easier to ask them to make it work with the budget that they have?
Yeah, that's essentially what
Right?
we're saying.
And then, what inside that budget, which staff, if you have 7 in there, can you get 2 of those 7 in the budget you have, but you'll get the other 5 if you get the grant?
When you say budget that they have, are you
But
talking?
like this upcoming 23-24 allotment budgets.
Presumably, they said they're planning on having 100 students, or 120.
Right. Off
So
of
I'm
120
assuming they're
students.
building their budget based
On 120.
on 120, or maybe build it on 110 just to have a little cushion.
Whatever it is.
Whatever that number is.
Federal, state, local money, this is the school improvement plan. However, if we were to get the grant,
Then we would
then
add
these are the
these.
other pieces based out of this plan that they submitted to us that we would add back in. Like right now it shows 7 people, we'd only be able to afford 2 with our current.
And these are the 2 that we would pick
that
out
we
of
would
that
keep.
group. Yeah.
We wanna get all these supplements, but we can only afford this much in our 23-24 budget. We're gonna buy this if we get the grant.
Yeah.
To separate them out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, and then they can push other items to a following year, which didn't have any hiring.
Right.
And
Right.
they're
Still
all
have to
teachers.
revise what they have now.
Yeah, they still would have to revise
But
this.
instead,
Still have to approve that.
I think that may be the way to do it, is to say, this is what we can make work, of this plan we submitted, we can make this much of it work with our regular budget.
Yeah. So I'll ask.
You wanna?
Yeah, I wanna ask this question of CSAB then. If they do that, is that the issue that is keeping you from approving this plan. Because it would be unfair to them
Yeah,
to come back.
Right.
Whether it's in
Absolutely.
3 days or in 3 weeks. Okay, we built this budget that will support this, we have this budget to support this plan, and then for us to deliberate on, yeah, but I really don't think that, we should have talked about this on June sixth, this part of the plan's not
Right,
solved.
guys,
I
we
know
come back
that,
with
I don't
that.
think that's legit. If we got issues with the plan, we need to say so now.
Well, that changes everything.
Why, you have issues with the plan?
No, but if the fidelity of the plan is compromised due to the fact that you don't have enough staff.
True.
It's a conversation.
Well,
It's only part of the plan, and they can still have
Let's-
improved
Yeah,
academic
yeah.
outcomes.
Off Eric,
It's all
that,
the
of
plan
what Eric
doesn't
just
get
said,
affected.
to me, if they can deliver what they,
Same outcome.
the same outcomes, then I think we gotta give them the shot.
And I
If they
think
can show
we
they
all
can make
do
it
that.
happen, we gotta give them the shot.
I think we all do that all the time. Like, you know, I want coaches for 3 coaches per grade. That's gonna cost money that, unless, you know, I'm endowed from high, it's probably not gonna happen. But when I plan for the year, I plan for what I have.
Right.
But the goals didn't change. And so that's, I think, what we're saying. Their
Right.
goals shouldn't change, but how are you gonna get there in this budget?
Right. Perfect.
Gotta be able to answer that.
But you make
You gotta be able to answer, like, how did you go from 7 to 3 and you kept it?
Yeah.
still.
And how's that gonna work?
Yeah.
How are you gonna make that work?
As long as it's well
Yeah.
funded.
So, does somebody wanna make a motion?
Do we need a motion, or are we just asking?
I think we probably need a motion, and the reason I think that is because if we were to get to the next meeting and still not be able to get where we need to go, we're gonna have to make a motion not to accept their plan.
What's the motion, right?
Yeah, I don't-
Conditionally, or
I guess the motion would be just to have them come back, to have them come back with the,
I would recommend that it also be clear on what you're expecting them to come back with.
Okay.
So that include that in the motion.
so somebody wanna make it? Our official motion maker over here?
I'm not sure I know how to word it.
I'm wondering if it would be better if we make a motion and then we work with the Office of Charter Schools to lay it out more clearly in some sort of letter to them to say, here's what we want you to bring back, so we're not trying to craft it in the motion.
That's a good idea.
Let's put that together with the
Would
Office of
that
Charter
work,
Schools so they can send them something
Allison, would that
clear.
work?
But can we do that? I think you can make it a more general motion, that just says we would like you to come back with a plan to show that it also includes how you're gonna finance the plan. That's simple.
And it has to be presented to us. I mean, it has to be in the hands of OCS in enough time for us to get it, review it, and make a decision by June 30th.
Yeah, which isn't much time.
Have a date for that? Right? It's a middle date.
What's today's date? Today is the 6th.
I mean, if
Are you out of school yet, Zeka? Are you guys out?
No, ma'am, we're not.
When's your last day of school?
Last day of school for students is this Friday, last day of school for teachers next Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay, so the 16th is everybody's gone by the 16th. Well, not 12-month employees, but I mean,
Well, and then summer school will start on the 19th.
oh, so summer school starts the following Monday.
Yes, ma'am, because, if we're gonna give the intense tutoring, so that we can retest some of our students, because we have quite a few students who are like less than 5 points away from being proficient. So we're flipping our summer school so we can get in and do some intense tutoring.
Within the
and
window.
retest them. And we have to have them retested and all that done before June 30th.
Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot.
And those students, if they flip over, will take our reading to a 60% proficiency. So we've really been trying to, in the midst of all of this, stay focused to what, the real good improvement.
Okay, well, what do you guys want to do?
Well, it's gonna require us, working backwards, it's gonna require a special meeting at CSAB before the 30th. So presumably sometime during that week of the 26th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when would you, if none of this was going on, when would you have your 23-24 budget done and approved by the board?
Success likes it.
You can come here.
Charter Success likes for us to give them a draft by June 30th. And we have to, again, make some guesses on that as well, because the budget hasn't been approved by the legislators and tell us what the allotment and the ADM amounts are going to be and so forth. So we really don't have a solid budget in place until most times by the end of July. But we will have a draft where we'll show you what our thoughts and plans, much like what we did with this. Here's what we would like to do by June 30th so that Charter Success can start putting some things together on their end.
How long will it take you to put it together? Because we obviously can't wait till June 30, so.
Right. I mean, I'll just have to go back and start working on it right now, as soon as I can get back with my finance person.
Those 7 people, are they full-time?
The 7 people in that projected plan, they were teacher assistants.
But they're full-time, they're salaried employees.
No, our teacher assistants are part-time. Because remember, we don't go to school on Mondays. So it's part-time for our teacher assistants, because Mondays are our
teacher work days?
Yes. So those 7 positions would be part-time.
Every month?
Yes, every Monday is professional development. We have a long day. Our kids go to school 8 to 5 on Tuesday through Fridays. Yeah. So.
I'm just gonna ask. I gotta ask. Given the history of low performance, has there been any thought of having students come 5 days a week to interact with your staff and have that educational time?
We haven't always been a 4-day school. This is something recent. And when we went to the 4-day structure and had that time for the professional developments, that's when we started seeing our biggest gains in terms of our growth, was after that. So we haven't always been a 4-day school.
Not that I agree with 4 days, but did you hear her other response that they go to school at 5 o'clock the other?
Yes, our students go from 8 to 5.
Yeah. Well, I know they're getting the hours in, but that's a long day for an elementary school student. And having a day of PD a week would be like heaven, like I get it.
I want it.
If you can make that work.
Well, and it helped more with the PD as well. It helped with the professional development, but it also helped with the teacher wellness, because I wasn't having to keep them after school and so forth. So I get everything I need on that Monday. So the parents, we do ask every year, so that if we have a problem with it, they don't have a problem with it, teachers don't have a problem with it. And like I said, if we were seeing our testing going backwards in terms of growth, we would maybe say, but it hasn't. Once we went to that, that's when we really took off.
Started working.
Yes.
Okay, so we're back to sometime the week of June 26th, we would need to see you. And that means that backs the having the stuff in by the week of June 19th. Is that possible for you? It's okay. I said we would have to meet sometime the week of June 26th, which would mean that we would need to have you submit things by the week of June 19th. Is that possible for you?
Whatever
That's
you
2
want,
weeks
I'm
off.
going to make happen. So if you want it by June 19th, I'm going to make that happen.
I'd say as long as it's a week before whenever we meet. So if we were gonna meet on the 28th, to have it by the 21st. I'm sure there's probably logistics to be worked out of when we can even get this room.
I would tell you, optimally, if you've already bought a ton of these supplies, these are hourly employees.
I'm sure it'll be virtual.
If you could itemize that and prove you could put that in next year's budget without the grant, you'd go a long way, it feels like. I'm not speaking for everybody here.
Right.
With this committee.
Right. And remember, on the plan, I gave you spans like over 2-3 years, so it's not like I'm trying to do everything in next year. So I'm just going to go show you what we are planning to implement for next year.
It's just,
Right.
if we can afford this, we'd have to be lean here or lean there, but we can afford this without the grant.
That's it, right there.
Right.
Is that the federal?
That's
Let
what
me make sure it's not one
that
federal.
would go a long way, make it a much easier meeting.
And then if you get the grant, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Right.
for that. In the morning preferably.
We're about to make a motion of some sort here. I guess I just wanna share with you and your board. We're asking tough questions, and we know that. And we know this is difficult on you to hear, come back again or more work. But we're asking these tough questions in the spirit of what can we do to keep this school open and follow through on what the state board asked us to do so that you can get that 3-year renewal. I realize it may not seem that way as you're sitting on that side of the aisle today. I mean, this is a board that overwhelmingly did not support renewal last month. And we're here today asking tough questions, yes, and asking you to do more work, yes. But it's progress towards that renewal, and I hope that that's somewhat appreciated.
And I hope that in the end, you'll see that you're glad you did it, because you'll have it at your fingertips. No matter what happens, you'll be ready.
Right. Everybody sitting in this room wants the same thing. So it's all about the students and the students' ability to be better and stronger students. As I just told you in looking at the preliminary data that we've looked at, this is the first time that we've ever been that close to having 60% of our population possible being proficient. So those teachers are working very hard. Yes, May and this month has been very challenging to get everything done, but we're doing it, and we're trying to make sure that as we meet your requirements, that we don't lose focus on making sure that these kids get what they need to be able to test as strong as they can this year as well. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back we need a motion.
Do we need to make a motion today?
Do we need a motion,
I don't think we
Ashley
need one
or
until we're ready to-
Allison?
I don't think we're ready to do it until we approve.
As long as you've been clear what your expectations are.
Okay. Do you have any questions around what we're asking? I'm sorry, you keep going back to things and then I start talking again.
We're gonna get your steps in today.
If I'm understanding correctly, my intent when I leave here, I'm going to give you at least a 1-year budget that's going to show you from that plan what we intend to implement next year and how we can afford it. And then I'll probably just be special and go ahead on and show you the next 2 or 3 years based off that plan where I plan to pull the money from.
Awesome.
As I said, had I known that you were going to want that, I would have had it before now. But
As if you're not getting the grant.
right.
Right,
Yeah.
but as a note, I do think that whatever plan you show us needs to have budget attached to it.
Yeah.
So don't see as 2 and 3 as being extra. Like if it's a 3-year plan, it needs to have 3 years of budget.
Right.
And I would request that, I'd request that we as a board try to meet virtually and they can be virtual as well on June 27th.
But it's virtual. You can
So
be anywhere.
that would give them, if you could get that plan to us by June 20th, it'd be a week before.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody in terms
I'm
of?
gonna have to, I have to make sure that this live stream is
That the
available.
room's available.
So I will try for that date, but,
Okay.
I can't make this.
Whatever date we set.
Yeah,
A week prior.
A week prior for that.
okay, yep, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'll try to get that scheduled today.
Yeah. And let's plan for it to be virtual, because
Oh, yes,
I'm
definitely
already
virtual.
hearing people are traveling and all
Won't be
kinds of things, but if you can jump in, okay, well, if you can jump in, that would be helpful, the more of us that are there, I think.
Well, we're gonna have to make sure we got a quorum for
Yeah.
whatever day that she sets up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And that morning, you'll have some obligation to be in prep calls.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
board meeting, so.
it's our state board prep call on Tuesday, so I'm looking more at Monday probably.
So, yeah, whatever day
Okay.
works, just
Yeah.
that week, let's just,
yeah,
other than not the 30th.
yeah, not the 30th, yeah.
Earlier the better.
Yep,
Okay.
all right. Well, that is it. We have a motion to adjourn. Lunch has been here for a while, so it might be a little chilly.
Still had one.
No, we don't need to do anything for this, Allison, so we can wait till we meet at the
Yeah.
special call meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye, any opposed?